Okay, so we are... All right, we're back. Excellent. Okay. You ready? I'm ready. Let's go.
And interpret them as
I've never had trouble with that.
Never. Well, okay, maybe you are like special in this way. You can like always tell 100%. Yeah. But I think that like broadly, there's massive disagreement right now in society from people about what is activating people's little women neurons.
I don't think that's true. I think you live in a rural town in Colorado and have I think you don't go out in the real world.
Or I think you live in such an online society that you think the other way. I mean, you're not representative of most America, so.
Yeah, I don't think you're representative.
Hey, wait, Turk. Okay, so I live in a city of 1.5 million people. Okay, in total. I work a retail job, 8
counterpoints, and not so erudite, Brianna Wu, and a few other people that I do not know. So just keep that in mind. Sir. Is it not playing? Is it not playing at all on the stream?
8 hours a day, and I deal with customers 8 hours a day. I have had 2 instances of transphobia within the last 4 years. What the fuck are you talking about? People just treat me as a woman. They see me and they see a woman. Like, they hear my voice and they hear a woman.
They're debating on what is gender.
You live in a city that represents less than 1% of total America. You don't interact with most America. So
I think a lot of people see trans women and think
most of the...
It's a shit show already,
that's
so
even true.
Be ready.
I think that if you believe that as a trans woman, you're probably mentally ill.
It's not mentally ill to recognize what people think, right?
Okay.
But it's just how people do this.
Actually, wait, I want to go deeper into this. So do you think that this is just true because most people don't get to transition early enough that the testosteronized effects highlight their male characteristics?
I think in regards to Brianna's
counterpoints to love you, buddy.
That you know it when you see it, that is not true. Oftentimes for a lot of trans people, a lot of trans women do not look like women to a lot of Americans, right? There's broad disagreement on that. And to reduce it just to this kind of colloquial, you know it when you see it, I think ends up excluding a lot of trans people in a way that is frankly not, beneficial to Brianna Wu's ends. I think
I want to correct you.
I'm going to say this right now. Like, the problem, see, the thing about it is that it really does have to be based on looks, right? That's the main thrust of what I believe, is because we do have society. Society is in of itself oppressive. And the problem is that did I just mess that up? Okay, there we go. And just a little bit more. Society is in of itself oppressive. And the problem with that is that we all have to conform to something within society, right? I do, you do, everybody does. Even if we're considered normal, there is something about us, most people, that is usually abnormal, that we must bend a little bit back and forth to be able to conform to society. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, it really depends. I'm severely ADHD, and I probably am autistic in some form or fashion. And so when I talk to normal people, when I talk to normies, I can't talk to normies. This was one of the problems I had in the military, is that the vast majority of people who weren't in nuclear engineering, I could almost not talk to outside of just regular dumb shit, because they couldn't understand. There were even nukes that couldn't understand me, right? I remember being made fun of because of my I've told this story before, but it's basically like there was when you're inside a pressurized vessel, right? You can assume that there is uniform pressure inside the pressurized vessel. However, that's not actually the truth. If you break it down enough, there is no uniform pressure. If there's anything in that pressurized vessel, like a human being that generates heat and breathes, or is a piece of machinery that generates heat and or does something to the atmosphere, the pressure is going to be different depending on how you measure it, right? So if you were to measure every cubic centimeter of inside the pressurized vessel, you will find pressure, temperature differentials across the entire thing, because humans create pressure differentials and temperature differentials, and so does machinery, especially if you're talking about high pressure air compressors, right? And so one of the things that was really funny is that these were essentially nuclear mechanics that were normies, right? They weren't me. And the reason they were normies, and I can say this, is because they were stupid. And how they were stupid is because they believed what they were taught. And so when they said, hey, a pressurized vessel has uniform pressure and temperature all throughout, They believed it. Instead of being like, well, yeah, sure, that's true because we're assuming that for ease of math. But that's not actually true. That's not how the world really works. It's much more, that's a low resolution view of something that if you look in a high resolution, you will find something that is extremely different, especially if you were to measure it in a smaller and smaller and smaller instance in each time. So if you went from measuring every square meter to every square centimeter to every square millimeter, you would find different variations on that. And not only that, the pressure vessel we're talking about was the engine room, and it had a hatch on the end of it that was slightly cracked that allowed air to leak out of it. We know this because it whistled. And not only that, during this actual interaction, I was standing next to a high pressure air compressor, a Worthington 3,000 pound high pressure air compressor. Now, what do you think a high pressure air compressor does? Does it suck air out of the atmosphere and compress it? Yes, it does. In the act of doing that, does it change the atmospheric pressure around the machine? Yes, it does. Not only does it suck air out of the atmosphere, which lowers the atmospheric pressure, it also has various different things, components inside of it that increase atmospheric pressure around it, including relief valves that constantly go off because it needs to relieve a little bit of pressure here and there as it compresses through its 5 stages of air compression. And so, combined, I know I'm laughing. I'm an absolute autistic moron for like even remembering this shit. But I'm trying to tell these idiots, these mongoloids, that look, we say the pressure vessel is a uniform pressure for ease of math, so that you can make calculations that for the most part, unless you're doing like some crazy physics, you don't need to really worry about the pressure differences within the pressure vessel itself, because that's not really what matters. But if you're breaking it down to its most basic components, that there is a pressure difference between where I'm standing right now and the hatch and the high pressure air compressor. It has to be. Like, you can't not have that. Every time I breathe in and breathe out, that changes the air compressor. It changes the air pressure. Every time the high pressure air compressor sucks in air to compress, it is changing the atmospheric pressure around it. Every molecule of air that leaks out of the hatch at the egress point of the pressure vessel does this as well. And it just, like, they started laughing at me and calling me stupid. Like, and just thinking about it, like, hurts my brain, because it's like, bro, you went through the same training that I did. Sure, you didn't go to college and study physics and math, but you don't need to do that to understand that that everything around you is changing the air pressure around you, and that a pressure vessel is not 100%. Oh my god, dude! It was just like, it was 3 of them. That was the best part. And I'm not gonna name names because it doesn't matter, and nobody cares, right? But it's just the best part was the crowning achievement. I'm standing there trying to explain to them, and my chief walks up, and he's looking at me, and he's looking at them, and he was like, he's just nodding along. And they're like, oh, Chief, did you hear this? This guy's so stupid. Did you hear this? He thinks the air pressure is different. He's like, what are you idiots laughing about? He's right. Like, quit being stupid. Go back to work. It's like, it's not like you even need to understand calculus or any of this nonsense. It's literally just a law of the universe, right? Anyway, so the reason I brought all that dumb shit up and I had to autistically explain it is because we live in society. And unfortunately, to be able to interact with normal people, I have to bend over backwards sometimes to not be a complete dick and asshole to people in real life, because they are not me. They do not have the same mental problems that I do that compels me to be the way I am. And so sometimes I have to slow down the way I speak. Sometimes I have to slow down the way I think, because if I do not, then they will not be able to understand or empathize with me. And I may come off as an asshole, more so than I intend to be, or that I come off as that I don't care, or that I have no empathy, when that is the furthest from the truth. I have great amounts of those things, but most people can't detect them because they are hidden under this. I mean, you've seen me talk about things just now. When I was talking about that, how fast was I talking? How hard did I go, right? When normal people see that, they don't know what to make of it. You know what I'm saying? And so we all have this thing that we have to deal with when in society. Society is essentially a democratized oppression, that we all agree that there are norms that we try to fit in. We try to fit in. And so if you are transgender, you have to try to fit somewhere in that. Now you can be a weirdo and be different. That's fine. Nobody care. Most people don't care as long as you don't bother them with it. They won't give a damn. But essentially, if you want to be this thing, you have to at least try. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, if you're trying, I can try. If you're trying, I can try. If you put the effort in, I can too. And I think most people in day-to-day life, if they see that you're trying, if they see that you're attempting to do a thing, they will at the very least meet you halfway. I've almost never met anyone aside from very select people that would not meet you halfway when you're trying to do this. Smokey, what's up, buddy? I don't know what I walked into, but the patriotic music of the game is making it interesting. Yeah, well, it's a bit slow today, and this game is like making me lose my mind because of what it is. So I decided to change the stream up a little bit, and we're listening to a debate hosted by Counterpoints and debated by Not So Erudite, which are people that I watch on YouTube about transgenderism and what is gender. So
it's the third time.
And we're gonna pause and talk as it goes along.
Hear me this time, Tad.
Enjoy.
Okay. So what I'm saying, this is not hard to get. Maybe grab a piece of paper.
That's Brianna Wu, by the way.
What I'm saying
You don't have to be so condescending.
I'm not I don't like her very much.
For most people,
that's my own problem.
I think it's really apparent, even with trans women that may not pass entirely perfectly. I think it's really clear what gender they are aiming for.
Okay.
You saw
Does that make sense?
You saw the Tarkov Hacker 2 thing? Oh, dude, did that not suck, dude? I saw that. The wiggle that gives it away. Oh man, did that not just like break your goddamn heart, man?
All right.
It sucks, doesn't it? It sucks. I need more spies. How many spies do I have in training? Got spy there, commando there, tanker. How many tankers do I have? I have 2. 6 aviators, 3 spies. Got 1 spy in training, so I have 4. Okay. Spies are intelligence. So let's make you a spy.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I like how you changed that a little bit.
I did
right?
not change it.
No, she did.
Okay.
She did
Maybe-
say that the last time.
maybe,
She said
right, 'cause we're
that people
talking
were
about this
presenting in a way that they are obviously trying to go for, and they are trying to get a reaction, which is
That guy
nice.
that's rubbing his
People.
face is
There is
an
a
asshole.
difference. There is a difference
say that
between
because
the
he's an
people who
asshole.
are nice to others and who can recognize you may have some testosteronized traits, and maybe that
what were we
really
doing?
makes you feel like shit when you look in the mirror, and maybe you don't want to highlight that to the other person because they're trying to present in such a way that it is a little bit different.
I think this is this like performance or emulation.
You haven't played
aspect,
live for 2
where
years?
basically you can see
Single
a
player
trans
conversion
woman,
mod?
and maybe
Yeah,
she doesn't like.
I'm not
seem-
gonna lie. If they had a PvE version only, I might actually get into it more. But one of the problems I have with a lot of PvP games nowadays is hacking, dude. Especially with Tarkov. And like the time to kill and everything is so like super fast. Like I can't like you see how I rage at XCOM, dude. There's no way I'd be able to play Tarkov and like not lose my fucking sanity, dude. Apologies for the F-bomb. Apologies.
Like a cis woman to you, right? And a lot of people would not get that little woman activator in the brain. But what I'm hearing from you is that you can still tell what she's going for, right?
Yeah.
So you can still tell she's trying to look a certain way. Now, already earlier, I said that some people are not trying to look a certain way, right? And you can still, I think you would say that there's probably some trans women and some cis women who are not trying to look like women, and you're not going to get it from that
Oh, nice. I can. Oh, very nice. Does that pop up?
perspective.
It does not. Excellent. It doesn't show on stream. Lovely. They revamped and rebalanced it for solo player experience. Is good in my opinion. That sounds pretty good. I don't really like. I've gotten out of first-person shooters a long time ago. I haven't played them religiously in a long time. Ever since like I think it was like Call of Duty Black Ops 2, I think. And it's just because it just lost its flavor, I guess.
All right.
And that if someone who is pre-transition does not present female, if they say they're a woman, I think you would probably still say they're a woman, right?
I'd do my best, I think.
Okay,
lost
but then
another
you're not
what
working
I'm
off
saying,
this emulation basis.
If I could finish what I'm saying, sometimes, you know,
Brianna,
I live in
when
Massachusetts.
When
yes.
you're finished, I'm going to want to pause.
That sounds
Brianna,
great.
Please finish your concept, and then I'll just want to interject and
That sounds great.
Talking stick.
So
I'm
I
gonna
think
build
sometimes when someone's really early in transition,
science.
they're not passing. Like we've all known that girl, she's a hot mess, right? You know, and I think it's something because, you know, I spent a lot of time in those queer circles. I don't have time, I don't have trouble like using the right pronouns. I agree with you in that situation. Many people would. I think to your butch example, I think a lot of butch women find it very funny when they get called a guy, in my experience.
But you don't think they would be a guy, right?
No.
Okay, even though they're
I don't
trying
have
to
trouble
emulate
telling.
women.
If y'all can pause,
If
if y'all can pause for a second, just because I do, Erudite did very politely raise her hand. I want to give her an opportunity to go, but also I want to make 2 notes. One, we are already fighting over kind of like how it's expressed and how society interacts with it and all that kind of stuff. We're not necessarily getting to our personal definitions of gender or sex and whether or not they're separated. I think making that distinction might help so people know where you're coming through. And then RJ, you made like a personal swipe. Nobody really took the bait, but I'm just saying, if you make personal swipes at people, I'm not gonna defend you if they take personal swipes at you. I would prefer it, at least for topic 1, if we could try to keep it like academic and hypothetical, and then if topic.
The one I use shares stashes globally, so if you want to use a gun at resort, I have to physically take it there, which is an extra dynamite. That's cool. Yeah, that's actually cool. Huge Stalker fan, and it leans in the direction of the mods. That actually sounds kind of cool. I'm not gonna lie. So tankers are not good to go. So I need more tankers.
Understood. Understood.
Spies,
Okay.
aviator.
Copy that,
aviator.
boss.
Nice. Okay, we can go ahead and snatch that one up. Snatchy. But yeah, this is some stuff I've been thinking about making videos of for a while. So we're just that's what we're doing. Gonna lurk, have more Phantom Brigade though. Roger that, my dude. Roger that. But this is the type of game that I can.
It is what it is.
Listen to something and play. And I'm not gonna lie,
I'm not going to defend one way and not the other. So if you make it personal, and
to
somebody makes it
not be
personal on you,
listening
I'm
to
not
something because of all the waiting that I have to do.
Not so erudite. Please share your wisdom with us, and then we'll let everybody get back into it.
I'm gonna let you know though. This girl right here, not so erudite. This girl's a thinker. She knows what the she's talking about, and I absolutely love her like balanced approach to everything, especially when it comes to like, if you ain't got data, you ain't got shit. Far too many people are ideologues, and I definitely believe she is not, and she proves it.
I think what Brianna and Toph are talking about is actually more aligned with each other than maybe it's sounding, because there's kind of a couple of things that are going on when we're talking about gender, which is, for the most part, I would agree, like with like probably 90% of the population, including in that is a large number of trans people. Mostly genders are performance, and there might be a couple of markers that still might like dignify being like, this probably is a trans person, but pretty much everyone can more or less like look at that person and say like, they're more feminine than masculine, obviously, right? If you're more attracted to feminine features, there's a number of trans women, especially like later on in their transition, that pretty much everyone would map on to be like, yeah, that's a much more feminine thing. Probably a straight guy is going to be more attracted to that than like a cis woman who like, this is like the Andrew Tate of like the Megan Fox versus the Hulk Hogan, cis woman versus trans woman. There's this.
I want to, since you brought up the tape, bro, I cannot, I saw this fucking picture earlier where it was like Andrew Tate, Joe Rogan, and Jordan Peterson, and all like the people from the intellectual dark web, including Andrew Tate. And I just have to say this like absolutely for the record. Andrew Tate is a garbage human being. Regardless of whether he is guilty of the things that he is being accused of, everything that he has stated that he has done, he is a garbage piece of shit human being. He, in his own words, has said that he traffics women and he degrades them and treats them like shit. In his own words, he has done this. Like, don't get me wrong. I've definitely done the stuff that he's done in the bedroom that he got caught on video doing. I've totally done that shit. So I totally understand that part. It's just when you say in your own words that you traffic women and that you abuse them, I'm not okay with that. And so I pretty much believe that he is guilty of what they say he's guilty of because he said he is in his own words. Now, he could be a lying piece of shit when he's talking about that stuff. But if you're lying about trafficking women, I mean, does that make you a good person? I don't think so. And we also have to take into account that he has stated on many occasions that he often scams people, and that he's built his entire business model on scamming people. So I'm just not even, no. And I despise the fact that so many people are just straight up defending him. Now, if you're like, okay, well, he's accused of these things, but he's not been charged, and we need to wait until there's a trial and there's actual accusations, then that's a 100% fair thing, and that's what I would say too. Because when it comes to legal matters, he has not been charged with anything, so he is innocent until proven guilty. And if he is charged with anything, he is innocent until proven guilty. And until he is proven guilty in a court of law, then as far as I'm concerned, he's innocent of everything that everybody is accusing him of. That does not make him a good person. That still makes him a garbage piece of shit human being because of the things that he says. Okay? And I cannot fathom why so many people on the right are genuflecting so goddamn hard to defend this man. Like, you can be principled and just say innocent until proven guilty. Until there are charges and until there's a trial, innocent until proven guilty. This is the easiest thing to do. This is the principled stance. But to be like, oh, the Matrix is attacking him, and oh, he's speaking truth to power, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, some of the stuff he says is true. This is correct. And if you think about some of the things he says, especially when it concerns like male and female relationships, some of it does have a grain of truth. But the problem is that when you cloak that grain of truth in absolute absurdity and shit, sure, it can make you think about those things, and it can help you either think about something if you're wrong, or it can help you substantiate it can help you substantiate your opinion already by making you able to defend it better. That's fine. That still doesn't excuse what's going on. And it still doesn't excuse how many people on the right are just like absolutely going apeshit defending him. Like, I honestly can't believe it, right? It's so retarded. It's so retarded. And if you ever wonder why I never identify with a political party, shit like this is why. Or ever identify with a political side or a tribe, this shit is why. This is exactly why. Because the left does it for for people who do really dumb shit on their side, and they just straight up defend it. And then, as you see, the right will do it with pieces of garbage on there. So we're just gonna move on. Like, oh my god, dude!
This element that's kind of true, and Taft's pointing to like the gray area where this isn't true, and it tends to be the case that like usually like non-antisocial people are kind of just willing to gauge at what people are getting at and be respectful of that, because like there's no purpose in really like going up to random strangers and being like, you don't pass. Pro tip, RJ, nobody likes it when people do that, right? So most people don't go out of the way to be like, you clearly don't pass. And people who do are pretty antisocial and nobody likes them, probably for a really good reason. And I think like the 10% doesn't necessarily negate the fact that like gender tends to be this nebulous thing. In many ways, it does kind of like trigger the like woman part of your brain where you're like, that's a woman. Because in the way that we look at anything definitionally, that tends to be the way that we engage in it. Like this question, unironically, is the same as like the grade 8 meme question we used to get where we were like, is a hot dog a sandwich? Or like, is like a smoothie soup, right? It's kind of the same stuff where like when we get to defining stuff, as soon as they get into kind of these gray areas of definition, it's like, it truly is Loki's wager. We're not really sure exactly where to like drop the axe to cut only the head and none of the neck. But that doesn't mean that like broadly the definition of saying like gender tends to be a performance that's downstream of biology, which is mine obviously, doesn't map on for most people, which is like I think the grass touching that Brianna's talking about.
Yeah, well, I
pretty much, yeah.
Sorry, real quick. Before we get back into almost productive conversation, I have to ask the panel, no comment is an okay answer. Brianna Wu, if you had to choose between dating Hulk Hogan with a vagina or Megan Fox with a penis, who would you date? No comment is acceptable.
Wait, is Brianna lesbian though? That's a different
I don't know.
I'm bisexual. Obviously, Megan Fox. I've never had a trans girlfriend, but yeah, I'd be into that.
I mean, first off, I'm bisexual to begin with, but I prefer feminine individuals, period. So, yeah. Like, your genitalia really doesn't bother me.
Okay, Erudite?
I love girls with dicks. It's like my favorite thing.
Based.
Yeah, I would go Megan Fox for sure.
Then,
yeah, Megan
I need
Fox.
Tank Bros.
okay, RJ, no comment. Doesn't accept.
Neither.
Okay.
He's an incel, full cell, sorry, whatever.
Then, yes, sir. All right, and then Turkey might have been gone, but if you had to choose between Megan Fox with a penis or Hulk Hogan with a vagina, who would you date?
Date?
Yeah.
Fuck.
One or the other. It's a very
no comment is no
Answer
comment
for
is an
both.
acceptable
I want to know
answer,
both now. I for sure
but-
want to know both, and the reasoning why.
Oh, wait, I want to know, yeah.
So dating.
So Hulk Hogan with a vagina or Megan Fox with a penis.
So dating would probably Megan Fox, but
Okay.
then once you start to go into like past first base, it's like, oh, I'm out. And then with the second one, it's gonna have to be Hulk Hogan because as the people from the Whatever podcast state, That's science.
I didn't know you were gay, but that's
I mean, it's
okay.
gay, yeah,
It's
but
all
You
right.
know
Whatever.
what? It's okay that you're attracted to masculine
don't
bodies.
mind me
Holy
gay.
shit.
I don't really care.
I can
We got the
also
main question out of the way.
Yeah.
I would love it if chat answered it of their own accord. Have at it. I think Synth had her hand raised, but I know Brianna's very passionate.
I
So Synth,
did,
please
yeah.
go.
Okay, so
And then we'll get
Okay,
into it.
okay. So at the very beginning, RJ mentioned Moni as the leading source for gender ideology. This is just blatantly wrong. It's actually Jewish people from the 1930 or from the Weimar Republic, which ran from 1919 to about 1927 successfully. It was burned down in 1933 by Nazis. And
Good.
Moni, holy shit, you're
Yeah.
wow, that speaks volumes.
Pro
Thank
tip
you
with
for that
RJ.
one.
RJ's not right.
I believe it was a Jewish guy named Magnus Hirschfeld, if I am correct.
It is, yes. So Moni actually did the experiment on Reimer, which is David Reimer, a case proving that gender can't be changed in children because he abused David Reimer by transitioning the child without the child's consent.
True.
yeah, fucked up.
I mean, I'm sorry. Engenderment has been around for thousands of years. Just because we've now labeled something doesn't mean that it didn't exist before. This is like being like math didn't exist until humans made it up, and it's like that's not really true. If you have two things and you had two more things, now you have four things. Just because we didn't name them before didn't mean that this component of existence didn't exist before.
Yeah, there are historical recordings of people who are of a sex acting of the other sex, while there are societies who are very, very sex segregated and into male and female. This has been around for thousands upon thousands of years. It's not going to change, and yeah, it's just
I
a
don't
mental
think
variation.
That's
That's
the
it.
contention, though. I think the contention is that we have a very modern approach to this issue, which is to encourage this kind of transition, and then to go a step further and to say people who
Mando,
are natal
this is the
male,
host,
who are
counterpoints.
undergoing these
So this is
procedures
the- this
and
is
these
the channel.
hormones are now jumping category, and they're now going to be in the woman category. If you
Oh,
look at
I-
any
okay.
historical culture, that's never been the case. And so we can look at all of these ancient cultures where you had gender non-conforming people, and sometimes they were in spiritual positions, sometimes they were well respected, sometimes they adopted certain roles of women.
I'm gonna have to
within
get
the
rid of
culture.
dudes once I
But
start
what
getting
we
insomnia
find is that
stuff.
all across the world, these people who
Oh
are gender
no,
non-conforming,
Mission
they get
failed.
the third sex category, and they're not actually seen as within the woman category. So I do think that we have a very unique situation that's going on here. And personally, I suspect that it is because we've had such rapid advancement in regards to transition technology that suddenly people who are gender nonconforming can now get a lot closer to the opposite sex in a way that does activate people's brains in the way that Brianna's talking about to say, yes, this is a woman. And if I'm going to extend an olive branch to her, I would say that a lot of people feel that way about trans women. That's why we're having this discussion. But I don't think that a colloquial definition of the people know it when they see it because they can tell what people are going for is good enough, just for the reason that there is still massive disagreement and it doesn't cover all the cases, all the edge cases.
sir.
Based.
Okay, so actually, I if I can comment on the kind of natal male thing. So the way
kept
that
her
I've
on,
kind of been
full
understanding
on the
sex
entire time.
recently is that there are sort of testosteronized characteristics and there are estrogenized characteristics. We recognize the estrogenized characteristics as female, we recognize testosteronized characteristics as male. There is a primary sex characteristic which can come out as male because of a testosterone wash, but the vagina isn't naturally estrogenized. There's no estrogen wash, as far as I understand, unless
How
I'm
does that
completely
go
wrong
on?
on that. And it seems as though to
By-
measure people
sorry.
by
By
female
estrogen-
or male at birth seems...
I'm just trying to understand when you're saying estrogen washed, are you talking about gonadic dropping and how
Yes.
vaginas? Okay, so I'm just trying to make sure.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
I don't
come
know. I don't
on.
know if I could fully agree with your mapping here. I think vaginas. I think functionally everyone would just say it's feminine, right? And penises are masculine by nature, right? Even though you're right, vaginas don't require necessarily an estrogen watch. To get the opposite of a vagina, you do need this testosterone thing to be baked in for the gonads to drop and a penis to form out of the clitoris. These things are required.
Okay, so
That's
I
my
would,
understanding,
Like,
as a
challenge,
non-biologist.
right? I would challenge this by saying there's a very clear difference between a testosteronized penis and an estrogenized penis, and a testosteronized vagina and an estrogenized vagina. They quite literally smell different, and testosterone creates a specific smell that is specific to testosterone. Estrogen creates a specific smell which is specific to estrogen.
Has insomnia.
These things seem to resemble each other more and more based on the hormones which are within it. So, are these things really male or female in their inherency?
So if I give if I start with the community creature that's just amorphous and gray everywhere or whatever, do you guys know that mascot that I'm talking about? And say I inject that being full of estrogen, what are they going to look like? Say I had a baby,
no idea.
the amorphous blob pops out, and I inject it full of estrogen. What's going to happen to this individual? They'll smell like estrogen.
Assuming it has like human DNA, it would
assume it has
grow
human
breasts, and it would like have estrogenized skin. It would have all of the secondary sex characteristics that estrogen brings. It would have all of these characteristics that we identify as female.
Sure, and assume also during prenatal it didn't get exposed to high levels of testosterone. Which gender would it develop most likely?
A vagina.
Right. So like
Because
once
that's
that
what
was
we
born, what sex would we identify that individual, that lump of cells as?
Right. Okay, so I don't like this like identification at birth. I don't think that it's useful. I think that you can have a vagina and it does not.
I mean, she was clearly asking the sex of the thing.
Yeah, like biologically, it's useful, right?
Like,
this is useful, right? We need to be able to, at birth, be able to identify whether something is one sex or another, because that's going to list it to a whole host of experiences biologically later that matters.
Don't be stupid.
What sex would we assign it?
Okay, so I think that this is more in depth than just looking at the genital, like outside externality.
Yeah, I injected it full of estrogen.
Well, okay, so all it has is estrogen, so 100% would never have testes that were descended or undescended. It would be assigned female at birth.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
That took a long time to answer.
All right.
I'm sorry, my brain did not work. I had to get all of the details before I could do the fucking stupid calculus, okay?
Oh, I got it.
So I agree with you that like when it comes to all these details, I think all these details matter. I'm not actually being dismissive of being like, oh my gosh, it takes so much. I'm not doing the conservative thing where they're like, that's a lot of words to describe nuance. I think the nuance is there. It's just fundamentally when we come down to it.
If it takes a word salad to describe what you're talking about,
we as a society assign that term, right? Female, and it probably predicts all of these collections of things together, predict whether something's going to be assigned female at birth, like 99% of the time. And there are things that fall outside of that, but like I don't know if rejecting sex is useful. Like I don't see the utility.
Okay, so I don't reject sex in its entirety. I reject like kind of the characterization that we give it now. We don't base sex on a lot of complex characteristics. We kind of just look at genital externalities, and then people might have fucked up puberties like 12 years later. And maybe it's 1% of the population, but we didn't identify that at birth, and now they have fucked up puberties, and we had no way to account for that. We have the medical equipment to identify these things. We just don't.
Of course not.
And people could be treated for these things very early in their life and could be informed of these things very early in their life, but we don't do it.
Being intersex,
and this is like a huge problem.
Yeah, being identified as intersex earlier would always be better. But the reason that we don't do it is because the heuristic is correct like 99% of the time, right? The heuristic that when they're born with a vagina, that they're probably female is correct 99% of the time, which is why we don't implement all of this extra cost, because 99% of the time, all this cost that you're amounting to just like test its gametes and its genes and whether testes are there and all these sorts of things is so ridiculous when the accuracy of the heuristic alone is so good.
Yeah. You know, I'm going to say something that may upset trans Twitter. Taff, you may like this. You know, I find the discussion that we get, there are a lot of trans activists on Twitter that seem really, really focused on like abolishing the idea of gender, or like I think many of them, to what you're saying, Kyla, they would really, really, really want to abolish that. And we can't assume anyone is a gender until, you know, later in life, and just let them express themselves.
That feels so bad.
And I just have to say, like, I grew up in a red state, and I think y'all don't know how insane that sounds to most of the country. And I think if you're trying to get cis people on board with a functional framework.
See, now Brianna is spitting that truth. Like, this girl now, she's spitting that truth. Regardless of my feelings about her, she's spitting truth. She's right. She's right. The vast majority of people have no clue what any of this bullshit is, what it means, and when you come out and say abolish gender, they look at you like you're crazy, because you are.
Work for trans dignity and trans access to health care. We got to back up and get back to basics. Like, I know trans Twitter is having like a graduate master's thesis on gender, but the rest of America is like stuck on like, how can a woman have a penis? So I think we've got to get a lot more back to basics as far as healthcare. And I think a lot of the messages that the trans community insists are true, I can just tell you, it's completely unsellable to vast parts of the country. I think it would be much smarter if we focus more on the freedom argument and said, like, look.
Oh yeah. The freedom argument is how you win this debate. Hands down. Like, look, here, let me just tell you something, man. This is something I've learned from watching years of Scott Adams and implementing this in my own life. The only true way to convince someone that you are correct in an argument, the only way is to agree with them first and then move them slowly toward where you are. So in like a debate on like an internet debate, you're never going to probably convince the person that you're debating with, because more than likely they are already ideologically opposed to you so much that you would literally have to bend reality inside of its own asshole to be able to change their minds, because they've probably built an entire career based around what they believe is true, regardless of whether it is or not. Even if they don't believe it's true, they've most likely built an entire career around it. This is the problem that we have with a lot of science, is that that bad ideas persist because people build their careers on them, and they won't die until those people die. And then the people that they trained are more likely open to changing that because they did not build their careers on it. They can actually pivot much easier. And so the only way you're going to be able to convince Red America, or for that matter, the rest of the world, which is so hyper conservative, it makes American conservatives look like liberals, because they are. They actually are. It's insane. And the only way you're going to convince them of that is to use arguments that they will understand. And freedom is the one. This is one of the reasons why the trans children argument thing is such a weird argument, because so many, it boils my blood that people are just, and I understand why, right? There's a lot of resentment from like the early 90s with conservatives pushing back against like gay people. And so that's why there are literally people out there who gay is their entire personality, which, by the way, you are essentially a teenager forever if gay is your personality. Just like if video games are your personality, just like if cartoons are your personality, action figures, anything like that. If that's the entirety of what you consider your personality, you are essentially not an adult. So if you've got more to your personality than just that, then yeah, sure. But like, unfortunately, my brother-in-law, for the longest time, he was just gay. And that was his entire personality. Now, he's changed a lot since then. Not necessarily for the better, but that's beside the point. But if it is your entire personality, then you're probably not a very mature individual. However, back to the point. The fact is the way you convince Red America that this is the case is to use the freedom argument. Even with the transgender kids thing, you have to accede that transgenderism is a mental illness, and that the treatment for the mental illness is transition, and that for the vast majority of people, transitioning is the treatment. For some people, they may not be truly transgender. They just may have some type of, and they may not be gender dysphoric. When I say it's a mental illness, when I say that, I mean that gender dysphoria is a mental illness, and that mental illness can be treated by transitioning. Potentially. That may not be the only treatment, but that is a treatment that could alleviate those symptoms and could potentially cure you necessarily. So if you don't accede to that, then you're essentially arguing, especially when it concerns kids, you're never going to win the argument until you accede that it's a medical condition. And two, the fact if you want children to be able to take hormone replacement therapy, right, HRT, then you're going to have to accede to that. That's just hands down. And I do believe that some children would benefit from doing HRT to prevent puberty from happening if they truly have gender dysphoria and are transgender. Now, they may just have some like, they may just be, what's the word? Gender, not gender curious. They could just be mistaken on how they feel, and that they could later in life be comfortable in their own gender. And we have to distinguish between the people who are truly gender dysphoric and who are not, and who just may have symptoms due to social contagion or some other type of weird nonsense where they might be gay. You know, just because a girl likes baseball and jeans does not make that girl a boy. Just because a boy at 3 years old likes to put on a tutu does not make that boy a girl. Like this is retarded. No. Boys playing with dolls does not make them girls, right? That's no, that's not how that works. I am not a girl and I played with Barbie dolls. Like, shut your fucking mouth. Seriously. So it's just like you have to, if you want to make forward progress, you have to do it correctly. And if all you're going to do is genuflect to insulting the people that disagree with you, you're going to lose. And the problem in this instance is that the vast majority of people do not agree with the crazy transgender left. They agree with a more centralized view. But the moment you start saying you want porn in schools, and that you want 3-year-olds on freaking hormone replacement therapy, that's when a lot of people are gonna screech and scream and be like, oh my God, what the fuck are you doing? And there's gonna be a backlash that you're not gonna like. So if you want to not have that backlash, then you have to do it properly. If you do it improperly, you will get a backlash and you will lose. That is how it works. If you don't like that, then stop playing. But, people here are actually trying to make progress. And if you want real progress, you can't just push. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. That's not how it works at all. Okay, I've said my piece.
This is a private decision. Someone should have the ability to do what they want with their bodies. As far as children, this is a medical privacy issue between parents and children and doctors to make the best decisions for themselves. They should have the freedom to do this without the government getting involved.
The problem with what she has just said, though, I agree with most of that. The problem with what she has just said, though, is that when the medical association is basically affirmation is the only thing you can do and anything else is considered malpractice, that feels bad. Because it's basically like if your 2-year-old, 3-year-old, or 4-year-old says that they're a girl or a boy, which is opposite of what they actually are, and all you can do is affirm them, well, then you're going to have more people that do that. Like
yes, sir.
Do you not get that? Do you see what I'm saying? It's like, because imagine that they don't have gender dysphoria and they're not transgender. But a 3-year-old puts on a tutu, and now you basically brainwash them into being that. You could do that. It's entirely possible to do that to children. So, it's real hard when affirmation is the only thing. You have to have some type of gatekeeping to keep out people who think they may be a thing, or whose parents think they may be a thing, but they're actually not. They're just being curious. Like, I can't tell you how many little boys I've seen and how many little boys that when I was a child put on dresses and played with dolls and all this other stuff, and they grow up to be manly men who have wives and kids and all this other bullshit. Like come on now. Come on. We can't be so stupid. Like, seriously.
I just think we need to resort to better messaging here, because I think the trans community overall is on course oblivion with the way we're presenting the arguments to the public.
I mean, we're making like 1,000 neo-pronoun tweets, and like we're losing healthcare in fucking states. We're like losing our healthcare. There are people fucking fleeing states, like fleeing states and going to different states because we're losing our healthcare. And we're like posting about fucking xenogenders and like neo-pronouns and how important it is that you don't misgender someone with. God, it fucking hurts.
But that logic train you're on doesn't line up with what Brianna's saying.
It does completely.
No, if you're
what are you talking about? You just misunderstood her.
No, if you're wanting private individuals to be able to dictate their own things, and we need to take government out of that. That includes schools. That includes healthcare. That includes a lot of other things. No. Education. Say, ignore me on this side, but shove my mentality into this other aspect. You can't have it both ways.
I mean, I think the reason why we're so concerned about defining gender is, I think that for a lot of people, defining trans women under the category of women is how they justify like trans women's right to do certain things, which I think is probably like not the way to go. I also tend to lean on the side of freedom. I'm not going to sit here and praise the Nazis for, whatever they did, because I think that adults should have the right to do with their body what they will. And
agreed.
I think that I would
absolutely
focus
100%.
on that. Like whatever definition of woman
you want to
that we
mutilate
stand
the
on,
out of yourself, you go right ahead.
People should be able to put things in their body as long as they're not harming society in some meaningful way as a result of that. I don't think that
this includes people who have the phantom limb syndrome. Like, it really comes down to the fact is, are you mentally capable of making that decision? And if the answer is yes, then the government and the society has no right to tell you no. If you want to blind yourself because you believe that you should be disabled, but you have your IQ is high enough and you can understand what's going on and you're mentally capable, I can't see an argument against that. It just, yeah.
Trans people are. I don't think
are we free or are we not?
Now, I think it's a very different question when we get to kids.
Simple as.
And suddenly we have medical institutions that are prescribing these to people who, we don't expect to have the full ability to understand and consent. And these people, we rely on medical institutions to take on some of that responsibility. So I think that's a bit of a different moral question there. But I also think that,
yes, sir.
I mean, I just don't think that like how we define women is, at the end of the day, that important. I think that like we can find a definition that is going to work for whatever conversation we're in. Personally, I don't think that any definition
because
is
your
going to
enemies
cover
demand it.
100% of trans women.
And if you can, it makes you
as
look
long as
weak.
we commit to one and stick to it, we can have a really productive conversation.
So you can be weak.
I hear what you're saying.
Or you can
and
win.
I mean this respectfully because I don't want to spend this whole panel arguing with you.
Uncomfortable
I think when
truth?
I'm talking
I'm
about
sure
when
he
we
doesn't
get
mind
back to
being
basics,
angry.
I hear what you're
Just so
saying
you know.
about we need to come to a better definition here. I may not agree with it. I understand it, but I'm thinking through the practical reality of what you're talking about, and it involves like us as a country and as a world coming to some magical point of view where we all have a discussion and have a nuanced discussion and an understanding about trans identity that includes all these edge cases. And it's just, it's a fantasy. Like when I'm talking about getting back to basics, I'm talking about access to healthcare for adults. That's under attack right now. And I think rather than getting into these esoteric academic arguments, I think, we need to really be thinking about like Emily Bazelon had a fantastic piece in the New York Times talking about the battle
To be
for,
fair, though,
trans
when
healthcare
Brianna's talking about access to healthcare, it's like, stop fucking lying, dude. Like, seriously, man. Like, no one is preventing you from having access to healthcare. What she is referring to, in my opinion, I think, is getting government-funded healthcare for transitions. And it's like, look, if you want to transition, that's cool, man. You do you, bro. But why should I have to pay for it? Simple as. Answer that question. Why should I have to pay for it? What? Because healthcare is right? Bullshit. Go f*** yourself. Like, how many people are hugely obese? And you're telling me that healthcare is right and every single one of them should have free healthcare? Like, that's horseshit. You want to bankrupt our entire country? Because that's what that would do. Right? Like, don't play with me. That's not how this works. I don't have enough stuff. Like, does this never go up? I guess I just have too many dudes, right? I'm gonna have to start firing people. Yeah, so that's the whole thing. It's like, the whole thing with the kids. Like, I understand the thing with the kids because I believe I can't remember which state it was. Was it Texas or Oklahoma that banned the transition surgeries on minors? I think a state may have banned HRT for minors as well. So I'm not sure on that, but like, so I'd say about half agree, half not, because it's not. It's more hyperbolic than it is true, in my opinion. But there is a bit of truth to it. There is a bit of truth to it. So we're at 2,800. I still can't do that. Requires 5,000. I could go ahead and pop this up. So let's go ahead and grab that, and we will upgrade.
For children, I think we need to get away from these academic arguments and get to some really basic political fundamentals.
Now, and Turk, I'll let you go because I see your hand raised up. But part of the reason why, because what I'm kind of seeing is you guys are having the academic conversation, all that kind of stuff. But part of the reason why I wanted people to define their terms is so we can extrapolate maybe out to policy or perspectives or whatever. Especially in the second conversation where we're talking about what should adults be able to do versus what teenagers should be able to do versus what's the age for intervention, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where for me, if RJ has a very specific definition, I want him to argue for that definition. If you guys have a very specific definition, I want you to argue your definition. But we can extrapolate and fight, but that's part of the reason why I was pushing for definitions in the first topic. But Turk, you had your hand raised. Top Dodge, I saw you going. So Turk, Top Dodge, back open.
Yeah, so I want to go back to Brianna because maybe I misunderstood what you were saying previously about the going back to basics. We need to have, a personal level understanding of what you're doing, and it needs to be private. There was some sort of private something in your conversation. Maybe you can clear it up for me. But when it comes, let's say we get public healthcare, public option, government provided healthcare. Does a trans individual get to have that sort of healthcare lumped into it when the majority of Americans don't support that type of service going into the public version of healthcare?
Do you have any sort of source for the majority of Americans not supporting that?
It was a theoretical thought process.
Yeah. Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. My bad. No, I'm sorry.
And then that's why I'm like, I'm trying to be good faith,
Sure,
that's why I'm asking for clarity, and it's like I'm posing the question.
He's been pretty good,
most
so
Americans,
I give him the good faith.
We probably don't agree with providing those types of treatments to that type of a community. is that something that we would need a special edge case? What sort of policy quirk would we need there to cover that?
I think there's a long-standing tradition in medicine that the decisions you make between your doctor, that's really up to you. It's really hard for me to think of any healthcare instance where getting the public.
She just like dodged that entire question. Like, but should the public pay for it?
Let's take a poll on it. I'm going to finish what I'm saying. I'm going to finish what I'm saying.
No, it isn't.
I'm going to finish what I'm saying.
Yes, it
it's hard
is
for me to think of
actually
any
an
instance
elective
where
surgery.
having the public take a poll to decide what an outcome would be for healthcare would lead to a better result. I think you're conflating that with the second part of the problem, which is access to the public commons, public schools. This is a public place. Public restrooms, the public square, being out in public. That's kind of a different question.
My question was pretty specific towards medicine in this instance.
Yeah, I don't think the public should get a vote in what you decide with your doctor. No.
Okay, well, unfortunately, that's not the way the medical system works because your insurance provider gets to dictate what treatments are allowed, what's in network, what's out of network, and
insurance companies are private. What?
Well, if we have a public option, right, then we have to go and negotiate with the public option. What
are you talking about, like Canadian healthcare? Are you talking about like Canadian healthcare?
No, I'm not a Canadian because Canada sucks. All right, I'm talking about a United States. This forthcoming public option.
Turk, there's a very good framework we can talk about this in, and that's the bans that people are suggesting for childhood transition. That is the public weighing in on this complex medical issue in a way that is medicine by democracy. And I think that if your position is that the government should have insight into that, I don't know what your position is.
It's 7 days.
Representatives get to voice my opinion that I elect them to go and say. So.
Right. The majority of people disagree with this. Do you think that should change how medicine is run if the majority of people disagree?
Well, that sucks.
I believe if we were going to have a public option that Americans pay through tax dollars, yes, my tax dollars should be represented by somebody that has similar values as I do.
Yes.
So what about the extent to which tax dollars go to things like Medicaid or to funding hospitals? Or
yeah, I mean, that's how it currently works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
I think, generally speaking, I was talking to Kyla about this. We've actually been talking all week, and I'm hoping at some point we can get into the studies that we both spent so much time reading today. But, there's a real battle over healthcare issues here, and the science is really pointing one way, right? So if I go to, I can't go get plastic surgery and have my Blue Cross Blue Shield in Massachusetts pay for it because that is an elective surgery. I think there's a growing consensus among healthcare providers and doctors and experts, even though these studies are not as good as they need to be, there is a growing consensus that this is life-saving, important healthcare. And I think because of that, it's really no different than diabetes or menopause or something of that sort. It's just healthcare.
Yeah, I'm getting minor FFS from Blue Cross Blue Shield myself. I don't know. These are actually medically necessary. When I look in the mirror and I want to not have fun thoughts about myself, and it happens every single day. Yeah, sure, because I can recognize where testosterone
necessary for your particular.
No, I absolutely did not. No. I did not make it medically necessary. The person who fucking forced me through fucking male puberty told me there was absolutely no other option. That was the person who made it medically necessary. Because now whenever I look in the mirror, I see all those years of testosteronization. I see that dehumanization that I went through for 7 fucking years. That's what I see. That's why it's medically necessary, and it's trauma.
Could I ask you a question?
No, there isn't.
Turk, could I ask you a question? I'm curious. How do you feel about private insurance companies covering things like psychotherapy and stuff like that, for treating PTSD or depression?
I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. So what if we had a psychotherapy, for example, that was able to reduce suicide rates over 60% in a specific population with a specific issue?
I think psychotherapy, because I know where you're trying to go with this particular instance is going, is a good thing. And I think we should try to not go through these other types of medical options that are not actually good. I think there's, I'll walk that back a little bit. It could be that in instance, what you're choosing to do is the right choice of action for you. I think there should be a more heavier emphasis towards the psychiatric or mental aspect of healthcare.
I can't remember what I just
going
bought.
Towards straight to this.
What the hell did I just buy?
Sure. Okay. So wait?
Go for it.
Can I suggest something? So what if we were just allowed to have people who are like this? Because if this was given as an option to me, I would have absolutely taken it. If I was allowed to just have just enough of a puberty to store my sperm cells, which I did before I transitioned, and then just be able to live out the rest of my life on puberty blockers, and then whenever I decide that I don't want that or do want hormones, then like be able to live out that life. I wouldn't have any of these problems. You wouldn't have, like, these insurance companies wouldn't have to pay for my FFS. I wouldn't have to like get any of the surgeries, any of the corrective surgeries at all, and I would still have my reproductive rights. I would still have my reproduction.
Actually, I think this is an okay time to transition, pun not intended, because we're hitting 9:50, so I figured we might as well open it up for topic 2. So basically, the question for topic 2 is, at what age, if any, is it appropriate to transition? So what my spirit, just to share my spirit for this topic, is I figured that for right-wingers who are Christian nationalists, like RJ, he's going to say probably never. I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, but I'm assuming that. Whereas moderate rightoids might say, well, if you're 18 or older, have fun, you do you, whatever floats your goat. And
this
then I feel like the real contention, because nobody talks about trans men, let's be real.
True! We've actually, I think I've said the only thing about trans men tangentially.
Yep.
So trans men can take testosterone and start lifting at the gym and growing mustaches. Nobody really gives a shit, and they can do whatever the fuck they want. Nobody really gives a shit about trans men. And if they competed in men's sports and they presented male, nobody would really give a shit. Whereas with trans women, that seems to be the main fight. And the main fight seems to be with teenagers, puberty blockers, what's the appropriate time to transition, whether or not teenagers can consent, whether or not they, parents are making the right choices, psychiatrists are making the right choices, doctors are making the right choices. So with all of that context and flavoring put in there, I'm gonna do reverse order so we can do intros, so at least maybe we can get some meat to sink our teeth into before spurting out in 10 different directions. So we'll do reverse order. Turk.
I'm gonna have to get another loan.
Yeah, so I like Connor saying that I'm a moderate Republican or conservative, because I do believe at the age of 18, I think individuals should be able to do what they would like to do. And I also agree that when it comes to the younger ages, it becomes a much more delicate topic. I am on the
oh, we got it!
I
lost the pilot. We got it.
Parents were as caring and, aren't as, no offense, Synth, but your situation is probably one of the things I'd like to talk with you more about to understand more. But if, in general, it's my intro though. In general,
okay.
I would much more.
We have literally reached the game has just locked me out. I need to do 2 more missions to level up, okay? To be able to get a hacker. That's what this is. I need a higher level camp to be able to get hackers. Oh. Move to this camp. Wait, what? We move camps. I need to go grab, I'm gonna throw up the break screen. I need to go grab some more drink. I need to use the restroom. And we're gonna see what happens. This is very interesting. Be right back. Right in the buttocks. What in your butt? Sniper bullet. What in your butt? A sniper bullet. That bitch tagged me in the head. I have no idea where this dude's lady is. No idea. I don't even know what his name is. Let's talk to this lady, shall we?
I am pleased that you like me.
Yes.
Now, come close.
Okay. Fully armored and ready to... No way, right? I don't know. It will blow up a lot of the corpses. The Purifier Veteran is going to be interesting. Let's go for this. It's going to use up your turn, but I want to see what it's going to do.
Now before the alien-killing world champion.
Holy shit! Not very. I say we take it. Let's go, baby. Come on, you got this. Yeah, 28 crit, baby. Die, Xenoscum. Oh my goodness, it don't get much better than that, baby. Whoopsie. Boy. I'm sorry, what? Hang on. I'm sorry, what'd you say? What'd you say? I didn't quite hear that. Did you say something? That's what I thought. Okay. Out of my way, coppers!
Motherfuckers on my ass!
How did that do damage to me? Get out of my way. Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy. All right, here we go. Yeah, that works. I can drive, I swear. I swear I can drive. My car is only a little bit on fire. That didn't save his ass. I love how they just like a... I mean, you know what?
I'll handle it! Just watch my back!
Die! No! No, Commander Emily! Why? Why would you do this? All right, I made protocol with Dracon. Ludo! Make it rain, baby. Oh my god. They're all on fire and poison. can't believe this, dude. Like, I just...
Your turn will decide my soul.
Okay, that was cool. That was cool. It only killed one of them.
That's it.
I mean, he's getting kills, so, you know, it's all right. You're kidding! Joe! What the hell is wrong with you?
Secure.
Why you so bad? Why you so bad? Thank you, Hidden Sage. Flawless victory, baby! Flawless. Well, my dudes, we have returned! Yes, 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 yes. Unfortunately, I am out of soda. So that means that we will not be having any more drinks after this one. So it's unfortunate indeed, but 'tis what it is. We also got a little bit of thing. So we moved camps, and now we have a higher ranking base, whatever the hell that means. It means I can unlock this stuff, which is kind of cool. I guess I'll just go ahead and unlock this. So it says the other base is paused, and I have 200,000 cash with 33,000. It's much wider. No. So, reduce cost of buying resources. Wow, that sounds... I wonder how often you can change heroes. Ooh. One more point in their skills. That doesn't seem quite right, but okay. So we basically have to start over, building an entire base. That seems a bit ridiculous, doesn't it? Doesn't it? I don't know. We're about to find out. And we need a canteen. And then we need... we don't need research at the moment. We're gonna need a... we're gonna need to build that way. So... okay. Let's build a power station. Oh, I'm a dummy. I'm a dummy. So, yeah, there we go. Whoops. And we have to build training facilities. So, we can build intelligence here. Build speed there, strength, and accuracy. So we need a fuel depot, level 2. So we will build it. The power station is there, so building it here should be fine. Yep. Building it right there should be fine. Probably gonna need some more houses than this. Okay. Let's go ahead and turn the debate back on.
Or prefer a more psychiatric approach towards treating it, and it's unfortunate
I
because
agree
it also
that with
counteracts
that.
into
I
the
would like that
testosterone
too,
puberty phase and all that stuff. So it's like, I get that
Psychiatric, I
part.
mean.
It's just I really don't think
If that's
that the majority
feasible,
of
that's the
people that are
problem,
going through these types of phases, they don't need to go all the way through with those types of medicines. So that's my position.
And we need.
Thank you kindly. Tosh.
Yeah, so trans men are actually incredibly relevant, specifically for this discussion, because of the massive changes in demographics within clinics regarding who is actually seeking this gender transition. So we've seen in a lot of clinics, they report their data, and they've seen significant upticks in natal females seeking out testosterone. There's a few studies on this. There's one that looks at like various US states, there's one that looks at California, and we see this pretty much across the board. And that is concerning because we are not exactly sure what is causing that. And I think that there is potential risk for issues of social contagion or issues where people are pursuing transition for reasons that are different than previous cohorts we have more studies on. But the thing is, we don't have a lot of good data for any of this.
Yeah.
Frankly, we don't have a lot of good data for
good data
adults
at all
who are transitioning. And for adolescents, it's even weaker. I've gone over a lot of these studies with Erudite, and it's study after study with like massive issues in methodology, with confounding variables, where the effect size is really small,
preach it,
or
girl!
it's not a representative sample,
Preach
etc.
it!
and etc. So it's really hard to tell what exactly is going on here. And in light of that, I do think it makes sense to try to restrict adolescents who are seeking transition. And the way that I would do that personally, if I could wave a magic wand, is require people interested in this to sign up for studies that are going to track them, and they're going to make sure that they are randomized in whether or not they're getting HRT or if they're getting psychotherapy that is going to track all of these variables. Because I think we need that data. And in light of the fact that we don't have a lot of evidence for this being an essential medical option, I think that that is probably appropriate. So, yeah.
Thank you. And then Sin?
So I think most of the problem with the way that children can consent to these drugs is probably just because of uneducation. We very, very massively uneducate, or we do not choose not to educate children on their own biology, or children on how human anatomy works and how hormones, or specifically any sort of endocrinology works. This is a massive problem because we get puberty, and then we have some people.
So the delivery cost is based on how far away you are. So this is still cheaper. Because it's 2 per and it's 1 gold less. Okay, interesting. Okay, what else do we need?
Well, maybe they're only 1%. But they start doing horrific things to themselves. I actually kind of agreed with Turk. I don't think people should be really easily access to hormones. I think that it should be like a very long time interest. That it should be like something that they have wanted for a very long time. That they should show interest in, and puberty blockers should definitely be on for quite a while before they're allowed these things, because they do permanently change your body, whether it is estrogen or testosterone. That's undeniable. The problem is that you can't really unfuck your body at that point if it's fucked to you. And that's where all of the dysphoria comes from. So better education is a very, very, very important thing if we want to avoid this.
Yeah, I think what we're discussing here is in large part a minority issue that has been blown up into to become one of the biggest culture-defining issues of our time due to, as Taj was saying, influence like social media, TikTok, etc., so on and so forth. And to speak more directly on the topic, whether I think a surgery should be
wrong
allowed
about
for
that
anyone,
first part.
I would say no, not at any age, and the issue is because of the complication rate as high as 67% in some cases, not all. I think it's rather barbaric to say, yeah, you can go ahead with that practice.
All right, Erudite, please.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to echo some of Taft's statements about the studies, except I'm going to differ on the direction that we go with it. I would say the adult studies are a little bit more clear to me. I think we have a lot more robust data about HRT in adult populations. The frustration I have, that's why I label my stream the empirical black hole, is when it comes to trans topics, I've spent the last 2 days reading literature. I've read probably at this point 30 plus studies, and my pile of garbage research, biased on both sides, was just ever growing. The methodology sucks. It's just terrible. They just do stupid shit, like they just use measures that don't make sense to use constantly. They lump groups together that probably shouldn't be lumped together because even the trans community would agree that they're different communities. It's incredibly frustrating. And so my concern is making policy in either direction when like a lack of data doesn't mean lack of evidence, right? Not having data on specifically youth doesn't negate the fact that, for example, most of the adult data on like transitioning is good. It reduces suicidality by a massive margin. The satisfactory. Detransitioning is exceptionally rare. And so it's reasonable to presume from the adult data that this would be somewhat true for youth as well. But I would agree it should be tested more. What I would say is despite the like methodological errors in a lot of these studies, it still is suggestive of a direction, and that direction is suggesting that HRT therapy for youths is beneficial. What I will bite on is the process by which we determine which youths are actually adequate candidates for HRT probably need to be cleaned up a little bit and a little bit less politicized as far as like making the gate too wide open. Because there'd be nothing worse than giving a 16-year-old girl a mastectomy who at 18 decides I was a girl the whole time, right? That would be awful. That's just a tragedy, and we should probably try to avoid that.
That's not
but
awful.
At the same time,
That's
you don't want to keep somebody who
tragic.
doesn't need to transition, and by the time they turn 18, they've killed themselves because they like are so depressed and so like distressed over their like gender dysphoria.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brianna, and then Open.
So I want to start by saying, Taff, you have said something in 3 separate videos that I've seen, and you said it again today, that in your opinion, we don't have good data for adults as far as the efficacy of HRT. I engaged with that in good faith in research for this panel. I spent a lot of time trying to find that. You'd mentioned the survey of all the data out there. I can find no evidence for that whatsoever. So if you have that, I would really appreciate you sharing that with me after the panel, because everything I've seen shows, and I can give you the exact studies here, improved mental health, lower suicidality, a feeling of contentment with your body and your gender presentation. Like there are a lot of really, really good things that I found. Additionally, RJ, you just made a statement there.
Juggernaut.
You said 67% of trans people have complications or something to that effect, or the surgery doesn't go well. I'm going to need to
That's
see
not
some
what I
evidence
said.
on that. Then I misunderstood. Would you mind clarifying for me quickly?
I said sometimes as high as 67%.
What
That's a meaningless statement.
What specifically, and where did you get that from?
Can we engage that in the open?
Yeah, I don't have a source.
That's perfectly fine.
I don't have a source on that.
Well, actually, Brianna, if you need to finish your intro, finish
I
your
do
intro.
need to
Source? I made it up. I fucking
Lock it
love it.
down. Lock it down. Let Brianna finish, and then
I'm
we'll
going to finish Wednesday. So I think that when it comes to children getting this healthcare, something I saw in all of the data is it's very clear this is extremely, extremely, extremely understudied. The demand for this has gone very, very high, but the studies we have for this, as Kyla said, they tend to be garbage, and we don't have a lot of certainty here. Now, we do know the stakes are very, very, very high when children don't get access to gender-affirming care. But there are a lot of barriers there. Something that really shocked me that I've never thought about is, so let's say you're a trans kid and you want to go on puberty blockers. I was really surprised to find out the insurance will not pay for that, and that costs between $1,200 and $2,000 a month. I don't know about y'all, but I would have a lot of trouble finding $2,000 extra in my budget a month for puberty blockers for my child, in addition to all the other costs that go along with having a trans child. So I think that, this was talked about in the New York Times piece, Emily Bazelon's fantastic piece, The Battle Over Gender Care in the United States, where she talks about how the providers feel caught on both sides of this equation because trans activists are going after them and the right wing has politicized this issue like never before. I really think we need to take a step back. I think we need to depoliticize this issue and let it be between parents, patients, and doctors.
All right, Open.
Okay, so Brianna, you asked for where I'm getting this. I'm specifically referencing the Journal of Endocrine Society. They did a systematic review in 2021, and I'll read you like 4-ish sentences for each section. So like quality of life. We conclude that hormone therapy may improve quality of life, so good. The strength of the evidence for this conclusion is low due to concerns about bias in study designs, imprecision in measurement, small sample sizes, confounding factors with other variables. Depression. The strength of evidence for this conclusion that depression may help, the HRT may help depression, is low due to concerns about study design, small sample sizes, and confounding variables. In regards to anxiety, the strength of evidence for this conclusion is low due to concerns about study design, small sample sizes, and confounding variables. Death by suicide, we cannot draw any conclusions on the basis of a single study. They basically limited it to the best studies they could find. And of this one, they said, we cannot draw any conclusions. So that's kind of, I'm just referencing this one thing.
Sure.
But you see this echoed elsewhere, right? Where
Did
if
you
look at
have
a lot
an-
of these,
yeah, go
if we
ahead.
look at a lot of these studies, there's big issues. And so I'm not saying there's not a lot of studies. There are a lot of studies, and I think that they tend to point in a certain direction. Particularly with adults, there's more studies, there's more robust data. But ultimately, I land on the side that the evidence is not very strong. And the reason for that is all of these issues that are cited in this one, and also in the limitations pages of most studies at the end of them.
Okay, I hear what you're saying there. I just want to point out there was a major piece in the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post that came out citing a very large study. Kylie, you read this. Did you find this compelling? It was a study basically showing the huge efficacy of this. You're a researcher. I'm a software engineer. Do you have any thoughts on this? In your professional opinion, is there evidence basically?
Which study is it?
I'm not. I have 30 open.
It was
Can you read it,
Wall
Brianna?
Street or the
Yeah,
Because
Washington
I would
Post.
probably know this.
I think it's the UK study. I'm pretty sure it's the 2015 UK study in the WAPO specifically.
No, it was the largest study ever conducted.
Is
and
it
was
like
in
30,000 people or something?
I will find that for
Or
you.
885. Basically, what I'd say is for Taft's study, systematic reviews are good. The issue is that what they're weighting mostly is methodological errors. So when they're saying low, what they're really saying is methodologically weak. It's not a meta-analysis.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm
Right.
saying that the evidence is like has these different issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so when I talk about strength, I'm using strength in a very specific way,
Yes.
which is to reference these methodological issues.
So what my response would be is, I suspect if you did a meta-analysis on the studies that we have, you're right, a direction would emerge, and the direction that would be suggestive is that basically you would
I love
find
how
that
the
these,
buildings
that
don't cost
these
you anything to
treatments
run.
are benefiting trans people. I suspect
Probably need
that
another
it is
maintenance
that
building.
HRT alone is insufficient because you're talking about a population that also has a high level of comorbidities and a population with high levels of stigma and stuff like that. And so I imagine, here's one thing that I will grant Turk, for example, we have no fucking clue about psychological treatments and trans people. It's basically not studied. It's researcher calls it the empirical black hole of psychology. It's not researched. We don't really know. There's one study from the 80s that was really, really shit, and that's basically it when it comes to the psychological effects. What we do know though is that people who have gone through gender, basically therapy that tries to get you to be your natal sex, we see high levels of distress in these individuals and higher rates of suicidality among these individuals. And so what I would say to you, Taff, is I agree that there's this paucity of literature. There's more in the adult population. The problem is it's a lot like trans athletes. It's directional, and it's theoretically directional in what we'd expect it to be. In the case, we're not going to open the trans athletes too much, but in the case of trans athletes, we see that trans men tend to be at a disadvantage, trans women maintain a bit of an advantage. And in the case of HRT for trans people, it's directionally always been suggestive that it does improve outcomes, right? It doesn't vastly improve. It's not like the panacea that maybe is being sold. However, I suspect with increased methodology, we're going to see better studies of it, because a lot of the methodology that we point to actually would harm our side as far as the results that we would get in.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. I just think there needs to be more info.
I agree.
Can I add on to that really quickly, because this is
Yeah.
relevant to your point, Kyla? Something I'm really worried about with these studies is the trans population has changed so much in the last 15 years. I'm in my 40s, and you'll read these studies, and they're lumping in non-binary people with binary trans people that want to transition, right? So I have huge concerns over this methodology as I'm reading it, that we're even studying the same people that are undergoing the
Before they
exact
even
same
got off
phenomena.
the train.
And I do want to
That's
fact check something that you said, Taff, just to give you another perspective. Julia Serrano, who, as you know, she's an activist in this space, she's really drawn some very fair questions about the common claim that the number of girls transitioning has skyrocketed as much as people are saying. She's taken a look at the data. She has some qualms with it. Kyla, I don't know if you saw that, to have a professional opinion if that's a valid concern. But something I believe is happening, this is just my own guess, is I think that because we have a more gender expansive set of language for young people, I think that childhood is disproportionately traumatic for girls than it is for boys. And I think that some of those girls are probably trying to escape structural sexism by asking themselves if they are trans. And to me, the answer to that is we need to be investing radically in gender healthcare, gender specialized clinics, so we can make really, really sure anyone that is getting this healthcare really, really meets some very high standards. Just one more fact. I was stunned by this from what I was reading with Kyla ahead of time. Only 71% of people, of these children that are getting basically hormone intervention, meet the clinical criteria for gender dysphoria. Only 71%. That is mind-blowing. maybe there's a reason the clinicians aren't making that 100, but I invite you to go read that standard. It is utterly reasonable. And we need to really, really have a high bar for anyone we're, basically doing a medical intervention on. With.
Oh, God,
Okay,
yes.
I saw Turk passionately object at the last 10%, and I think I saw Synth make some faces. So I would like Turk to go.
I'm very emotive.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like,
Yeah,
Brianna, I have a daughter myself. She's getting ready to go into this time zone, which is why I resonated with everything you said until you said we need to start treating this with drugs. Sorry if I'm strawmanning you, but it's like we definitely need to be investing into these children's mental states and getting them through that, not necessarily pumping them full of what y'all are debating in these different analyses that y'all are doing. So it's like,
this is so clear, and I'm sorry if I didn't say this skillfully. Let me just make really sure this is understood.
I understood what you said.
I think the danger is super high that someone could be misdiagnosed. We have a shortage of experts in this in the country, and we need to continue developing very high standards for intervening with children pharmacologically. And we need to make very, very sure that they have access to experts that can make really sure that this is a good fit for them. Because I think when you really look at it, they're children, they're being rushed through this system because there are not enough providers.
And that's in reference to your 29% of possibly misdiagnosed people or
people not meeting the clinical criteria for gender dysphoria, which is a pretty low bar. I invite you to go read it. It's not crazy.
No, I understood you, and that's why I provided the other part of the number. So it's like I agree with almost all of the things you said there, but given what both Erudite, Taft, and what you're also kind of saying in your studies, it's like there could be a benefit, but there's also alternatives to this unconsensus view of using these types of medications or procedures to alleviate individual cases.
Sorry.
I just don't think leaving kids without health care is viable. I think if your child had but good friend Amanda,
let's be real, that's not what we're talking about,
voice acting for
Seriously,
Evangelion,
stop
one of the most famous animes of all time. Her kid had leukemia, right? Very low chance of surviving. He did, and he would have done anything to save his life. I just think like if you've got a parent, and because the suicidality is so high for these kids, I think you want to be able to give them access to health care, and I think that's a private medical decision between a parent, a doctor, and a child.
I agree. I think that the problem that we're facing, though, here is that transition is being overhyped as this panacea. And I think that that presents some issues, especially for trans people who go into it sometimes with very high expectations, and those are not always fulfilled. And so I think that, like, if you tell people over and over that you need to get these medications or you're going to commit suicide, I'm not saying that's what you guys are saying.
You're going to, like, will it into
when the
existence,
rhetoric gets very extreme like that, I think that makes people more psychologically vulnerable, because
I think,
they are no longer viewing themselves as these kind of like robust creatures that really can make it through these things. And there's not really evidence to suggest that like there's going to be this big improvement in suicidality and like actual suicide attempts. So
there is actually, but
no, there isn't. There's all the studies have like major issues, and especially on the issue of like actual committed suicides. That's like usually the weakest part of the data. But yeah, so I think the messaging is really irresponsible here, and I think that there do need to be certain structures put in place that we get this more studied, and I don't think that that's going to happen unless we have this coordinated response, which I do think probably requires some sort of government intervention here. Sim.
I was just gonna agree with you. I think that we're selling the wrong transition. Like, we're selling the models. We're selling Blair White and Buck Angel and, like, people who transitioned in puberty. Like, we're selling these things, and the vast majority of trans people are transitioning post-puberty. The vast majority of trans people don't have the privilege of transitioning whenever they're early enough to avoid the other puberty. And so we're selling, like, this really, really hyped-up image of how you can look as a trans person. And for the vast majority of people, I'm, like, very much on the train that the only reason I look like I do is because I was severely anorexic for all 7 years that I had testosterone in my body, so it simply did not grow. I think that if I, like, actually ate food, that I would have a lot more testosteronized characteristics.
You'd be fat, so...
No, protein maps onto a lot of things like height and bone growth.
So, like, there are a lot of things, like, I was very, very malnourished throughout my puberty, and a lot more people don't have that. A lot more people get a lot more testosteronized aspects, and when we sell the models, when we sell the people who look the best, and those are the people that we see on social media, the same thing happens with young girls. We sell a false image, and we sell a really, really awful self-image to people who can't meet it.
Yeah.
In Sin's defense, she is not that tall as well.
I'm 5'4", I'm average female height.
So, yeah.
I actually have size 5.5 feet. I'm 2 sizes below female average there too. It's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Turk or RJ have to pipe in, because I'm guessing you guys probably would differ more than
No,
I could circle check on this.
I've won the debate. Y'all have already said that doing this to people under the age of 18 is not backed by science, and that there should be other research.
Okay, no, you don't get to win by straw man, people. No.
That's the way I'm interpreting this.
Okay,
no, I
if I don't see you, then I can win. That's not how this works.
I agreed that it should be a lot more strenuous. That like all of our like diagnosing and our actual prescription of these medicines should be much more strenuous, and we should have much more. Like I agree.
And you agree with me in my intro statement on that.
Nobody here agrees with you that we should save it until post 18. Nobody here, I shouldn't say nobody. Many of us don't agree with you on that, Turk. I would say absolutely somebody under 18 can access things like, first of all, puberty blockers. I'm fine with much younger, and like cross-sex hormones. I'm okay with basically more or less whatever the doctors say, which it sounds like they're weighing in at 16 for cross-sex hormones specifically. And so I'm comfortable with both of those decisions. I'm fine with that, and I understand the necessity for it, particularly for like masculized and hyperfeminized features, because you can't surgery away like a woman developing very wide hips and then trying to transition to be a man. That's going to be you're basically fucked. Yeah.
And 16.
Yes, because here's the thing. If we all agree that gender is a performance, hold on. If we agree that gender is a performance, right? To some extent, then we're saying if you want to transition, you need to perform well. And the issue is we can't then say, and we're going to do everything we can to limit your capacity to perform well. So you're just going to be fucked for the rest of your life. You're going to be sad, and no one's going to think you're attractive. Fuck you, trans people. That's unironically the logic right now, right? And I don't want that. And at the same time, I agree with like all the criticisms of like this, like the trans community treating it like a panacea and being like everyone will look like Blair White, or passing doesn't matter at all. And it's just like, both of these things don't make sense together ever, right? I agree with the criticisms, but I'm not agreeing with you, Turk.
So the data doesn't necessarily reflect your position, but your position is that because you believe that should be the case.
Summarize for me what you heard me say the data says.
You believe the data says it points in the right direction. If it benefits, it benefits. The question then is becoming, is the benefit measurable? Is the procedures
she's got really good speed. Look at her, dude. Let's go intelligence.
And do we need more data and analysis to get that direction affirmed?
So just to be clear, the important data that's not being brought up here is the data to suggest that specifically transitioning children is harmful to them. And when it comes to that data, there is basically nothing. Almost all of the data is suggesting some benefits to them, right? Even things like cognitive performance on puberty blockers. Yeah, specifically the psychological benefits, right? So there are negatives to being on puberty blockers, like things like body mass index will increase, and it's going to affect like how your bones develop, fucking obviously. Like there are negatives to being on puberty blockers. The issue is that the lack of evidence, the fact that there's a gap of evidence here isn't evidence that it's bad
very much
to put
enjoying
kids on these medications at all. Like it is in no way evidence of
I
that.
want to go play Dark Tide, but I'm like,
all of the evidence and the theoretical speculation that we have is directionally in what I am talking about. And so like it's possible a major paradigm shifting study will come out that's done really fucking well, and it turns out that putting kids on puberty blockers is really bad, and like 40% of them regret it, and there's girls with mastectomies running around everywhere that are crying because they just want to make breast milk, right? This is possible. But unless that study comes out, all of the data that will will continue to come out is most likely going to be in my direction without some major paradigm shifting study to shift that. That's what I'm saying. You would need extraordinary evidence. This is how science works. You would need extraordinary evidence at this point to massively redirect the direction of what we think transitioning is doing for transgender youth and adults.
I mean, Taft, you could probably echo what I'm saying. It sounds like if there was substantive enough data that was collected properly, had a significant enough sample size that goes counter to what Erudite's beliefs are here, that would be a completely feasible outcome.
Well, okay, so I think when we look at, and when I say that the evidence is weak overall, I'm really talking about like all of these methodological concerns, right? So I'm saying there's confounding variables and issues with the study design, but I think that when you look at these studies, when you dig into them, you'll find that like there is an improvement in like reported rates of depression. So like people report less depression after going on HRT, or when you compare, kids who have gone on HRT versus kids who want to go on HRT, you'll see like benefits. The question is like, is that a representative sample of people, or is there another issue? For example, the kids on HRT are also getting therapy, and that's explaining it. So I think what Erudite is saying to you is that like the evidence that we have does point to it being beneficial, but there's just issues with that evidence. And so like, if it was like, I don't really expect there to be a study that shows there's like a significant negative effect on mental health. That would be quite
I'm gonna try to get everybody
but
like
I do think
max
that there are other
freaking
issues,
stats, and
right?
then
So
we're
like
gonna go from there.
there are concerns.
Considering
that
I've
if you
got a
give
lot of money
child,
and I could just wait forever,
puberty
we're just
blockers,
gonna roll
or
with it. I
you
just
let them
wish
socially
I
transition,
could pass time faster.
that will cement a gender identity that is otherwise fluid and might change later. So you might be unnecessarily medicalizing this kid when they could just revert back to identifying as their natal sex in the future. And so we do have like some like napkin math evidence for this. And we also have some like indication that there might be a changing demographic structure to people who are transitioning. And that brings up concerns about social contagion, which hasn't been disproved yet. And so like, is it true? It can be true that transition is not having like a big negative mental health effect on these people, and also that transitioning them is maybe not the best case option for them, either because it puts them down a medical path which is unnecessary and expensive and leads to all of potential issues, or because it gets more people to follow down this path, which is also unnecessary for them. And so that is why personally I think that there could be a little bit more restriction in this area. On Twitter, I said that Republicans were more in line with the science for wanting to ban gender affirming care. I think that's what the kids call a bad take, because that is not really correct. And I was talking out of my ass there. But what I do think is true is that there should be like a little bit more scrutiny on this, and I do think that's what the evidence suggests.
Can I bring this back to some reality?
I am very
real,
skeptical of all this
concrete
bullshit.
policy issues here. So one of the things is one of the main people that came up with the guidelines.
And you know what? Look, let me tell you why I'm skeptical. It's because I have an 8-year-old daughter who's extremely autistic and has ADHD. So I sympathize with her in many regards in that case. But I imagine like her going to some fluffing school, in some giant blue place, which is one of the reasons we moved out of Nashville, by the way. I'm inebriated, so I'm a little bit slower, which is kind of funny because it helps me like think through things, which is kind of weird. But I think about how I would feel if, I walked into her, second grade classroom and her teacher like had all the like crazy libs of TikTok, freaking gender shit all over their wall, and all I would be in trying to convince her that she's a boy and she's a girl. I'd lose my goddamn mind. Like, I love my daughter. She is what she is, and I know what she is. Like, and I think a lot of it is that parents don't know what their children are, and they just autopilot and assume. And I think that's a lot of it too. So it makes me very angry. So I'm very skeptical of stuff with children because of that. Because how many autistic kids are just different, and then they get like roped into this shit. So, but however, as Erudite said, I got to put my fifis aside and be like, look, the data suggests that detransition is very rare. It's rarer than being a trans in general. So, gotta put the fifis aside. You know what I'm saying? Just gotta put the fifis aside. Okay. Let's continue on.
Update the chapter on basically how you treat trans kids. His name is Leibowitz, and this chapter had been the same since 2012, right? It had not been updated. Everybody's just waiting for this update, right? And he is stunned as the chapter comes out, and this is in the New York Times. He's talking about how the right wing had turned this issue into political dynamite and made it basically impossible for him to do these studies. So, do
you know why they turned it into political dynamite? Do you know why they turned it into political dynamite? Do you? Do you have any idea why that happened? Do you think it's just because trans kids want to be trans? Do you think that's what it has to do with? Or do you think it has to do with a bunch of fucking adults doing a bunch of fucked up shit to a bunch of kids? Do you think that might be what it has to do with? Maybe having books that have like instructions on how to use butt plugs in like the 5th grade? Like, get the fuck out of here, man. Seriously. Blows my mind, dude. That she would say that after saying what she said like an hour ago. Comprehensive sex ed. What does that mean? Does that mean teaching 5th graders how to use butt plugs? Or does that mean instructing them on how biology works? You tell me.
Just talking real political stuff here.
Yeah.
For you to fund the studies, I think all of us agree we would like to see more of. The fact is, the massive right-wing hate campaign against trans children is very
definitely
much,
the massive
it makes that
right-wing
more
hate
complicated. NIH grants, like my husband works in the pharmacological industry, they're very difficult to get. They're very strenuous. If you're looking for like a public university to do this, tap much of the, like, I don't agree with you, the research is as bad as your assessment, but I think if you want even better research, that's going to cost more money. It's going to have better survey design, right? So what I would posit is, again, we're coming back to the fact that politicizing this issue to the degree that we have is leading to worse outcomes for literally everyone here. And everyone listening to us stream at home, really pay attention here, because everyone here that is talking about providing access for children, we're bringing studies, we're being very measured, we're admitting there are problems, we're talking about flaws in the design.
Did not Erudite say that all the evidence is like
to this? There's another
horse
side
shit?
of this that hasn't done that homework respectfully.
And she's the only one of
they've
you,
drawn some
Miss Software
conclusions, and
Engineer,
they have not
that has
gone and
any
done the work needed to come to those
like
conclusions.
relevance to speak.
I would argue that's
obviously.
not helping the outcome here.
Speaking of which, RJ has had his arms folded silently for 45 minutes to an hour. And I saw you. I saw you react to the name Leibowitz. I reacted as well, but I saw it. Do you have so
Counterpoints. You are
what I'm hearing?
amazing,
To summarize so far, I've actually heard the progressives or progressive-ish since Top Taj, Erudite, and Brianna hash out a lot of stuff. That you're not a progressive, Top Taj. I'm sorry for insulting you. Okay, I see your face reaction.
A horrible
Sorry.
insult.
Okay, fascist, lurking, conservative, centrist, fascist.
Schizo-fascist.
Wait, what?
Come to my side, Dad.
I got it. So, basically, what I've heard is them.
Look, I literally haven't had enough time to like actually build anything. What the
If this had started as
is
like
going
single
on?
sentences or whatever, this would have been people
What kind of
hitting each other
fucking bullshit is this?
for like
Got a
probably
Twitter.
hours. So I'm actually,
I can't even-
even though
what?
this is the spiciest content I've ever seen.
What the Like, get here! Seriously? Game? Seriously? I can't even make the building in the other base. I had to build an entire new base to be able to make this bullshit. And it expired before I'm even able to like get it up and running? Like, fuck you! 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 All right, I'm done. Sorry. I'm drunk, so
Scene.
we're having
This
fun.
actually took a lot of like dynamite and basically took the primers off the dynamite instead of exploding it in the fucking room. So I was impressed with that. That being said, the conservatives Turk like he's outlined his like moderate concerns and criticisms, whereas RJ,
I need to pee. Be
I'm
right back.
projecting, but I feel like you're kind of dismissing the whole thing because you're not even considering.
Well, that was interesting. So, unfortunately, the great and powerful waifu decided that I needed to do a bunch of shit. So, you know, shit happens. Here we are, doing the thing. What's going on here? Why is this? What's going on? Am I so inebriated? I can't figure out what's going on here. I think that might be the case. Okay, there we go. Oh, there we go. All right. The Tango Bango has arrived, baby. I'm drunk AF. All right, we ready? Let's go.
In the first place. So, I mean, would you at least check in and tell us where you're at?
Yeah, so I am, like Brianna said, a little out of my league in the sense that in the circles that I travel in, like, transgenderism is kind of like a non-issue. It's more for the Daily Wire, Matt Walsh types. And so I do not know all the studies, right? I'm not that well researched as I can see people on the panel are. What I would say, though, is going back to puberty blockers, what we do know on the subject is that they are irreversible and linked to infertility. So I see a lot of talk about the mental health. I don't see a lot of talk about the physical side of things.
Do you have a study?
So you understand, do you understand that like children have been going on puberty blockers to stave off early puberty for like 50 to 60 years now and it hasn't affected their fertility? You know this, right?
From the studies that I've seen, that's entirely incorrect.
Oh no,
wait, this is about children transitioning and we're talking about the effects of infertility.
And I can't see those studies that they don't exist.
Holy fuck. Source, I made it up.
Well, I'm sure he didn't make it up, right? I'm sure he just like used one study.
My bad. Yeah.
And the issue is like, RJ, I guess what I would say is when you're wanting to like look into research, you don't give a fuck what I say. So maybe I won't even say this. I'll probably just say this so that, you know, everyone else knows the reality of research.
Do it, girl.
Like when I prepped for this debate, I thought if I was very anti-trans, what are the papers that I would look for? And I looked for those. And then I said, okay, now if it was really pro-trans, what papers would I look for? And then I looked for those. And then I read all of them together to try to get a more comprehensive.
Can you see why I like this girl? Like, this is how you do science. This is science, baby. God help me, son.
Of understanding of what's going on. And that's how you should do your research. So if you saw one study that said puberty blockers are really bad, and if the study wasn't actually a study, if it was just an article from Breitbart that you read, or more likely just like something Nick Fuentes talked about, and then you're citing this, that's really bad research. It looks very silly.
Okay, wait, Eric, do you disagree that puberty blockers can cause infertility?
So the relation to puberty blockers and infertility isn't actually super high. We would expect it to be like, to be honest, my fertility.
But it depends on how long you're on.
Yes, it does. So typically, what I've seen is that if you stop it before 16, that's when you start to see most of the negative effects like dismissed. Other than the height loss, there's going to be almost always some height loss and sometimes some body fat stuff. But all the body fat studies I've seen are really poorly controlled and didn't control for things like diet during that process. So I'm not sure how much I like,
should have been making
care about the body fat.
more than I should have been making all this other
and you can look at a lot of
nonsense,
studies for puberty blockers, and a lot of them are focused on like precocious puberty. So these children who are having puberty before they should.
Yes.
And if you put them on a puberty blocker and then take them off when they get to like 12 or something, when they're good to start their puberty, turns out that that's pretty safe, right? Yeah. But that is not necessarily transferable to trans people who you're going to put on these blockers sometimes for many years in bed where they don't have another sex hormone and they're in their adolescence, and then you're expected to continue on spironolactone or Lupron, one of these testosterone blockers, or you know the inverse for trans masks, for many years, for perhaps decades, right? Because that's a totally different story on the infertility side.
So I think I don't think I've ever seen evidence of people being on puberty blockers for decades. If that's occurring, it's probably exceedingly rare, and I would say that sounds like even a medical institution would be opposed.
I've been on puberty blockers for like 8 years, right? Because my body will produce testosterone beyond like the normal female range if I'm not blocking it.
I feel like these aren't these
they're not technically puberty.
Okay, I was gonna say, is it?
But like,
my understanding is it's okay.
Well, there are other ways to suppress estrogen. It is a more delicate balance, but you can't do it just monotherapy. And it doesn't work for every single woman. Right. That is true. Some people do have to use the puberty blockers, and that's really unfortunate because the damage that they can do to your liver, particularly, I believe, is very, very bad over a very large amount of time. That's why I switched to shots. That's why I switched to Depo. There are bad side effects of these things. A lot of maybe, am I wrong about a lot of the puberty blocker side effects being able to be controlled for with supplements?
I do think that that's true, especially for like certain things like osteoporosis. I know.
Like calcium.
To mitigate that.
Yeah, I'm on a calcium supplement right now because Depo does that to your bones.
Yeah, I just want to be clear that like when we're talking about puberty blockers and we're saying that they're very safe, a lot of that evidence is like in a very specific situation. Yeah. And if you are taking estrogen to effectively block testosterone, you're probably gonna have a similar effect of like This is why so many trans women sperm bank, for example.
Yes.
They have this, like,
Yeah, and RJ, it probably does feel pretty bad when everyone else is talking at an academic level and you're like down here at like high school or like middle school biology.
Oh.
It probably does feel pretty bad.
That's
I agree.
I wish RJ
Credit
could
Nazis, dog.
offer a
If I could just,
impression.
I want to
I would love.
That's not, like, look at the smile on her face. Like, seriously? Like, I understand you're trying to gotcha an individual who is, let's be real, not very nice, right? But like, if you're really wanting to debate this and you're really wanting to make like a thing, that's not how you talk to people, man. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, there are a lot of people that identify with him, and you just lost them because of that. With your little gotcha right there, your little gotcha. There's a much better way you could have worded that. That wasn't such. Well, essentially, I'm gonna be quite frank. Of you being a fucking asshole. Okay. So.
More thing to this.
Yeah.
One of my very best friends, she's not trans, she's a cis woman, and just for various health reasons, she did not have puberty until she was like 17 and had to have it like induced, right? And the effects on her body have been really extreme. She's the tiniest person I know. She's got big personality, but the side effects with like bone density, it's not great for her. And I think something I've seen repeatedly from a lot of the reporting about how these gender clinics are operating is they don't have enough resources to basically go through and really give every single child the care that they need, looking at that bone density, taking tests, taking to the endo every single week, right? This is a reason we need to invest in care more. Because even having all of this science, it doesn't matter if your local clinic is so underfunded that they can't actually order the tests and process it, right? So I really do think this is a public health emergency. And my motivation for that is wanting to screen out kids that are probably not trans, right?
Yeah.
You said something I really agreed with that on Twitter, and this is a hot take, but you said, like, if we don't really get this pipeline better as far as giving children access to gender clinics, there's going to be a proportion of them, they're going to grow up and they're going to sue their healthcare providers, and it is going to be devastating for the trans movement overall. I fully agree with that assessment. And I think that's why it's so important to make sure we're meeting a higher level of science than we currently are.
Can I do?
Next time, I will invite David Mendo.
Can I do a question? Because I'm concerned when I watch basically I've had to like dismiss RJ because he just like isn't ready for the adult table ever. But the Turk is somebody that I actually know is much more like pretty much good faith about a lot of these things. And I just want to be checking in because I think one of the worst things that I think could be the outcome of this conversation is to see a bunch of people who are left and pro-trans stuff biting all of the bullets of concerns and problems and limitations that we should absolutely like walk away with and be concerned about. And your walk away would be like, yeah, see, trans kids shouldn't have access to any of these things. That would be the worst possible interpretation that you could have because it's unsophisticated. And this is the problem when it comes to like resolving a lot of these trans related topics is that if one side is willing to bite the bullets and then the other side says, great, thanks for giving us the reasonable bullets, now we're just gonna cut off everything because you admitted that you were wrong. That's unironically somewhat driving this trans panic because that's the worst possible outcome for trans people, right? If a trans community says, yeah, these are the limitations, puberty blockers, these are the things that we don't know, this is the lack of evidence, and then a bunch of like more reasonable, I'm not talking about like the outrage, but reasonable conservatives go, great, let's take away all of your access to healthcare. It's like, this is why, in many ways, why we get such a reactionary left and a reactionary right, is because like nobody's willing to like bridge and bite the bullets in between, right? I think it would be.
And that's why I'm glad I'm here, because you could take the exact same arguments and apply it to the exact same people that are making your types of policy decisions, and they're going full throttle in the other direction. So it's like, I agree.
That's why I'm biting those bullets. I agree that there's a problem with what the left is doing and how we're like engaging with the policies and the rhetoric. I agree with that.
Yeah, because from what I'm hearing in this panel, the quantity of data doesn't support the stuff that's being broadcasted across mainstream media, Twitter, all these other outlets. It makes it easy for normie conservative dumb folk to say, hey, we shouldn't be doing this because, conservatism, progressive at speed limit or whatever, right? It's like, if y'all guys just slow down and like take this more measured and methodical approach rather than saying, nope, we got to go full bore, got to get everybody in there. That's where you're losing the main fighting chance that y'all are trying to get support for your thing. Because it's like, I appreciate
100%.
all of y'all being open and having conversations, but as soon as y'all get onto Twitter and as soon as you engage with people that
100%.
don't want to be open-minded towards these types of conversations, you instantly shut off the people that are watching those conversations, and they say, nope, I'm not going to support you.
So, this is the bridge that I think needs to be built, and this is what like the human part that I think needs to be understood. I think it's understandable for a conservative to say like, aren't we jumping the gun a little bit? And I would say,
yes.
Probably. The issue is, I don't know
Quote
what
it. Someone get the clip.
Yeah, the issue is, what do you tell the mom who's watching their kids slowly starve themselves and be anorexic for 7 years and wanting to kill themselves in a state where she can't get access to anything? Like, what do you tell that kid's mom? And this is like the human experience. When conservatives are saying slow the gun, they're talking about an ideological experience of something that they disagree with at an idea level. What progressives are often talking about is human lived experiences of watching people that they love kill themselves. And so it's like...
You know, that's a very good point. I 100% agree. But what if you're wrong? What if they're wrong? What if the clinicians are wrong? We have to take that into account as well, right? Because being wrong could be just as horrible, if not worse, than being right.
This is where they I honestly implore the conservative compassion is saying when you're talking about slowing down, what you're telling people is your kid doesn't matter as much as this idea does. And I understand at a societal level why you're saying this. The issue is that at the individual level, there must be compassion in that messaging. Otherwise, all progressives are hearing is fuck your kids, I hope they die. That's what they're hearing.
And here's the thing is that
I think that your language being so hyperbolic is part of the problem. We've gone back and forth so much on these studies, and I feel like we both have a pretty well-grounded understanding of where it's at. And I don't think that we are talking about this extreme life and death. We don't really have the evidence that people are killing themselves because they don't get access to HRT. We just don't have that, right? And so I think that when you bring it to this level, I think that that sets you up to have therapists or not therapists, have right-wingers, conservatives, people who are very anti-trans, just from a gut level, to immediately call you out and tell you that you're totally wrong on that.
Just to
even
be
though
clear,
I
though,
know that you know the science very well.
All of the direction of the evidence is suggesting what I am saying. We are in many cases, because all of the suicidal ideation, when people experience the decreases in suicidal ideation in the populations that were better studied, one of the main things that they cite is the happiness that they experience after the transition. And a lot of people, when they are suicidal, gender dysphoria is the most important thing that they cite that is driving them to kill themselves. And so
but to be clear, specifically with suicide, that is one of the metrics that we have the least evidence for. And we can talk about suicidal ideation, but another problem here is that suicidal ideation, there's a lot of gradation in it, right?
Blaze, what's up, buddy?
Suicide is very different from
How you doing?
about suicide with a plan.
I'll correct it. The better.
Love your face, man. How you doing, buddy? Good to see you, sir. Good to see you. Welcome. Welcome. Doing good. Just done with D&D. Oh my goodness, D&D. What are you doing on D&D, baby? Doing a weekly game kind of thing? Doing the God Emperor's work, my friend. All right, let's do this. So you're at 79, 70. You're almost maxed for everything. Let's get your accuracy up there.
Yes, sir.
You're 74 accuracy, training on strength.
Yes, sir.
You're doing speed. Yeah. 71 on intellect.
Consider
Let's
it
go
done,
strength.
boss. Yes,
73.
Copy that,
Accuracy. Actually, you want to be a computer specialist. You don't need accuracy. You need strength and intelligence.
Yes, sir.
You're at 63. Oh yeah, man. Yeah, D&D's great. Hopefully on Tuesday we'll be doing the RP. I hope. But I'm probably going to be taking a good portion of the week off, mainly due to the fact that Diablo's coming out on my birthday. Excuse me. Let me rephrase that. The closed beta for pre-orders is going to be on my birthday. So I'm going to have 72 hours to go no life on a video game that I'm very excited about. And the waifu has agreed to buy it for me, so I have no more compulsions about buying it. So here we are. Hopefully I don't actually win the Pantheon thing this weekend, so if I do, that means I'm going to be stuck. I don't think I can stream the Pantheon thing. I'm going to be very mad if that happens. Because I've already already messaged them on Twitter, be like, oh, it's my birthday this weekend, already entered and everything, and I'm going to be real mad if I win it. But, whatever. And then we'll get to do it during the end of March too, so it'll be pretty good. But yeah, I'm probably going to take most of the week off due to no life in it. I'm going to stream as much as I possibly can, so. It's gonna be great. I'm gonna be playing the Sorcerer first, then probably the Necromancer. Necromancer. That's right, the Necromancer. And then the Barbarian. And I think that'll probably take up all 3 days. It will be glorious. But right now we're just watching some. It's just a cleric with bad timing. Sir, you sit down. But yeah, so I just want to give you guys a heads up as to what's going on. So you're both knights. Let's put you on day shifts. There we go.
Yes, sir.
You've got low stamina. Why do you have low stamina? Do you not have a house? Where is your building? Where are you? Is it you there?
Yes, sir. All right.
Weird. Okay. There's 3 dudes here. Should be fine. Should be fine. Yeah, I was gonna play some Dark Tide today, but I decided to give this game another go.
Yes, sir.
Because of how, let's just say, poorly I reacted to the game. Because of certain proclivities that it has. And I needed to give myself another shot at it, you know what I mean? Okay, we have all the doctors we need. Excellent. So we need to start hiring dudes. Let's go. Slow recovery. You're a night owl. Let's put you on night shift. Boom.
Yeah.
You're a security individual. All right, I have all my maintenance dudes. Soldiers, bam. We're hiring soldiers straight up. All day, every day. Let's go. So yeah, we've definitely gotten a lot further. Basically, what I did is I woke up. I went to bed really early last night because I'd been like denied sleep and stuff. So I wanted to the wife wanted to make sure I got enough sleep. We got enough sleep. I woke up at like 2:30, started the game again, played a little bit, got to the point where I failed last time, reloaded it, and then saved it. And then when we started the stream, which was about 6 hours ago, we started over. So it's been pretty good, and I've barreled through and figured out how to finagle it, and it's been fine. But yeah, so been pretty cool. Oh, but right now D&D is fun. Makes Bard, and when casting cutting words, always tells dad jokes. Absolutely, and we have been simultaneously sipping with Jack and Coke. So cheers, Marza Wiki, Blazing Ice. Cheers to you boys. Thank you for being here. Since this game is, to be fair to the devs, it is rather boring, especially with all the waiting that you have to do. And it's, it's just the nature of the beast, right? It's kind of how the game works. I've decided to do a little political streaming, and we're listening to a debate on transgenderism with Counterpoints, Brianna Wu, and Not So Erudite. There's some pretty cool cats that I follow on Twitter and YouTube. And yeah, we're listening in. So hope you guys enjoy. Cheers.
Evidence that we have is for suicide attempts. We don't actually have good evidence for ideation.
No.
Yes,
we have worse evidence.
No, we have way more evidence for suicide attempts.
No,
and
I mean, like,
medical
look at that
assistance.
20,000 people study that we were talking about earlier. It's got like a lower p-value for actual attempts than ideation. Ideation, I believe, is the one that.
While y'all are doing your research,
yeah.
lab coat eggheads, Synth has a passionate opinion to share.
Sorry.
So, thank you, Erudite, for painting, honestly, a picture of my pain and suffering that really just made me experience it and cry. I genuinely mean thank you, because I don't understand how to get this through to conservatives. That I was genuinely in so much pain and suffering for 7 years of my life that I was slowly killing myself with no recourse. I didn't care about the way that I looked. I didn't care about my life. I didn't care about any of the things that went into it. I escaped completely into other things, and I did not at all progress as a person. And I don't understand how I am supposed to display how much pain and suffering I was in, and just how much that could have been alleviated by simply saying, here, store your sperm, and you can go on estrogen. This is an option for you. It simply would have alleviated so much of the pain in my life, so much of the trauma, so much of the drug abuse, that I use dissociatives so heavily to dissociate from reality because of a lot of gender dysphoria problems. And I don't understand how to get this through to people. I don't understand how I can actually get them to be compassionate because RJ is just sitting here fucking grinning at my pain and suffering. I mean, it's heartless. These people are genuinely evil.
I
They
really
would say the
hear
same
that
about
pain,
you,
and I'm
so.
genuinely
Yes,
sorry
sir.
you went through that. One of the things is when I ran for office here in Massachusetts, I'd spend a lot of time talking to Republicans.
sir.
So just cards on the table. I don't think conservatives are all monsters. I grew up in Mississippi. My family are right-wingers. I really genuinely understand where conservatives are coming from.
All right.
That
I
said, I've really got to push
disagree with
back
that,
on
but okay.
the statement that was made earlier here.
I believe that you
think
believe it.
that there's an unconscious assumption, actually a very explicit assumption that's been on this panel. There's the progressives
sir.
and Twitter that is really
Yes, sir.
accelerating the gender debate in this country.
sir.
Yep.
Now, please
That's true.
forgive me if I'm
Yes,
wrong,
sir.
but raise your hand right now if you
Yes,
don't
sir.
think trans Twitter sucks and is out of their mind 90% of the time. Please raise your hand
Wait,
if you
raise your hand if they don't suck.
if
Yeah, if
you,
they don't
if
suck.
you love it. If you love trans Twitter.
Yeah, if you love trans
then
Twitter.
There's no problem.
I
Please
see
raise
no
your hand.
hands.
Great, we
Listen,
all
I
agree.
love all of my oomphies, okay?
Sure, all of
Who's
Twitter
got
is
hands?
okay.
Half the-
Anybody got hands?
Not
Nobody got
every
hands.
Twitter.
Trans Twitter is
True.
a particular
Cheers, bitches.
Wrecking ball.
Yeah.
But let's be very, very clear. Trans Twitter does not have any power.
Yes,
Even
sir.
the blowback that happened to developing the new standards of care for children was largely academics
Consider it
talking
done,
to each
boss.
other on mailing lists and giving nasty comments, right? The people that have the power right now, the people that are hypercharging this debate, is the Daily Wire, which is doing show after show after show to millions of people, demonizing.
How do you
trans
not have
people.
enough rest?
It's bills that are happening in the State House. We just learned this week that a huge treasure trove of documents, emails from anti-trans activists came forward with secret think tanks that are out there writing these laws and passing them off to people. So we all agree that there are excesses on both sides when it comes to the language of this. But I would posit to everyone on this panel when it comes to attacking trans civil rights, when it comes to criminalizing the decisions that someone can make with their doctor and healthcare provider. There's one side of the
How have
country
you not
that's
been getting
doing
enough
this,
food?
and it's not trans Twitter.
Seriously.
I just find it funny that you think that this one segment of a social media platform is not the one that's driving
Ugh.
this. This social
I didn't
media
say that.
platform is feeding into other social media platforms, and other social media platforms merge into other platforms. This information is coming out from all different aspects, and it's being shared and propagated. So as much as you don't think that trans Twitter is a large component of this, it is a component of it, and it
actually
unfortunately
is, yeah.
explodes due
Hold on,
to the type of
So,
word.
I agree
that's
with you.
happening.
Hold on. I agree with you. In fact, I said earlier in this debate, I think the messaging that trans Twitter has decided has set the trans community on course oblivion with civil
And
rights.
it's happening on Facebook, and it's happening on all these
So-
other.
So
it's
I
not-
agree with
oh
that. But
God.
there is a difference. There's a difference in
It's
messaging.
Twitch too.
And there's a difference in actually writing bills and criminalizing
Yeah.
healthcare.
Yeah, because it
Those
got to
are two
Facebook.
different-
It got to all the boomers that are actually now worried about it.
Okay, so I just want to go back a little bit and pause. So when we're talking about suicidal disparities, Taff, I apologize. It was one study that I don't think I had sent to you yet. It's by Toma. I'm not sure if you've seen Brian Z. Toma 2019. That's the main one that I'm citing that I think did a really, really good job of breaking apart the different groups of cisgender versus transgender and did a really good job of analyzing them. Obviously, you can go through. I know you're just getting it sent, so it's going to be a little bit different. But when we look, if you go all the way down to table 4, that's the one that I'm focusing on. And if we have an odds rate, it basically, I don't want to have to explain odd ratios. If anyone will just grant me that I know what I'm talking about when I'm saying odds ratios, what we see is that for both suicidal ideation and attempts, transgender women were the highest, overall doing this. They were vastly out, ideating and attempting, and then the next under them was transgender men compared to cisgender of both of those things.
Yeah, to be clear, I absolutely agree that these people have much higher rates of suicidality, and that's definitely very well founded. I think what is less well founded is whether or not HRT has a positive effect, right? So there's a few studies that we've gone over. For example, I think the big one that is probably not even a representative sample, but does find beneficial effects with mental health and with ideation. Then you look at ideation with a plan, ideation with plan and attempt, and the p-values of those are much higher, 0.73 and 0.64, right? So that's what I mean, that when you break it down, you get very different answers across the spectrum as far as where the benefit of HRT is really going. And that is the source of my claim for having less data on the actual people who are actually committing suicide or having plans and actual like things planned out for the suicide, rather than people who are just passively ideating.
Okay, understood.
Great.
All right, so unless somebody has a can of worms that they want to open up, I do feel like the progressive and the one fascist, the esoteric fascist, were able to find some common ground. I felt like Turk did some good pushback. And then RJ, I know that lab coat bullshit is not your favorite thing, but maybe next time I'll, we'll get Erudite to send you some homework notes. That way you can do lab coat shit, so you can argue with her about lab coat shit. So,
Perfect.
and then if not,
do you actually want studies?
Insist,
oh yeah, send them my way. I'd love to.
And,
yeah,
and
look
if
over
you
it.
don't want to argue lab coat shit, then what we'll do instead is we will force the progressive.
You're hungry? Go get something to eat,
and
bitch.
Our esoteric
Jesus.
to exclusively talk about anecdotes, feelings, and literature.
Very masculine things. Yep. Yep.
To inform them. And I'm kind of not kidding. Like if they had like a bunch of Karl Marx quotes and you're coming at them with the Bible, I think that would actually be pretty good.
Hey, if RJ wants to talk about his fifis instead of all this, I'm down anytime.
Yeah, so absolutely would love it. But since we are coming towards the last 15 minutes, I do feel like y'all are covering good ground, but it also does feel to be more like a nuanced breakdown instead of people trying to go for each other's throats. We're going to go into
pilot,
outros,
artillery,
and then you're welcome to like kind of hang out with us, decompress, although this was a relatively chill panel. If you want to hang out for an hour, just bullshit, talk about whatever you want to talk about, you can. If you have another engagement, if you want to be someplace else, you can dip out. So, Miss Brianna, where can people find you? What are you passionate about? Shout yourself out and share any final thoughts on the topic.
Yes, sir.
Oh my god, this is so nerdy. Please don't judge me, but I was at Games Done Quick, speed running Super Mario 2, my Princess Peach only speed run. I'm literally one of the top speed runners in the entire world with Princess Peach, so please go check that out. We just had the Frame Fatales event, and I'm trying to get into San Diego for the really big Games Done Quick prime time to do that.
Yes, sir.
And when Resident Evil 4 drops next week, I will be speed running that one. If you want to see some hot takes, you can follow me on Twitter at Brianna Wu for as long as that service continues to exist.
And then it seemed like Turk had a passionate response to speedrunning Peach, so I'm going to let him do his outro next. Shout your stuff out and give us a rebuttal that Brianna is legally prohibited from responding.
RE4 remake looks so good. Does it?
Did they remove the mask requirements for GDQ coming up?
I have no idea.
I never really liked that type of game. I never played. I played the original Resident Evil 2, I think. And all the rest of them just look like garbage to me. I understand like the survival gameplay, but I never really liked the premise. Most Japanese games I can't play, dude. I really can't, dude. I'm American. Japan is weird. Very weird. And I just can't. More power to them. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, let them. Like, their art is amazing. Never gonna shit on them for that, right? I'm not gonna shit on them for making their games their games. It's just not been my thing. So I can't. Attest to that. So. What do we got? Is anybody high enough level? You're gonna be a tank bro. You're a computer bro. None of them are really high enough.
Yes, sir. Okay.
We need to start letting them do their thing. So
Roger
we'll do
that.
speed training.
Yes, sir.
Let's give
Consider
you
it done,
comms.
boss.
We'll specialize.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Consider it
Demolition. Specialize in
Consider
demolition.
it done, boss. Yes, sir.
Consider
it done, boss.
Let's make you
Consider it done,
artillery.
boss.
Or actually, let's make you a
Copy
comms
that,
bro. Yeah,
boss.
there we go.
Yes, sir.
Specialize.
Yes, sir.
What do you already got maxed? Your strength, so we'll
Copy
give
that,
you
boss.
artillery.
Yes, sir.
Is there anybody? You've got
Yes, sir.
accuracy, so we'll make you
Roger
this.
Yes, sir.
And then
yes,
we can go from there. You're this, so we'll go from there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You are speed, so
Consider
we're gonna
it
make you a
done,
demolition
boss.
bro.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
What do you got?
Copy that, boss.
You're training accuracy, okay.
Yes,
And you
sir.
are training accuracy as well.
Okay.
Scottaboosh.
Yes, sir.
And you're a medic. You're hungry, okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Never mind.
All right. Well, I'm
Anyways.
happy to have nerds. Turk, please.
Yeah, so
Turk.
I'm Turk. I do science and tech, PC hardware, gaming handhelds, and all that stuff. If you know what the Steam Deck is, you should definitely look up my channel on YouTube at The Turk. You can find me on all the other social medias as well. I am glad this debate was actually kind of like a conversation for once. So props to Counterpoints for not throwing me into too big of a trap. But I stand by all my intros too, and I think I won this debate. So pretty good day for me.
Okay, so in order to have the proper amount of shit on Turk, we'll go to Erudite. Please shit on Turk and do your outro.
I don't want to shit on Turk. Turk, your beard looks great. I feel like every time I see you, I feel like the beard game is better. And not a lot of men can pull off a good beard. A lot of men are very patchy. My husband is jealous, I'm sure, of the beard. Specifically before a schizo FBI analyst thinks something else. I should clarify that. I don't know. You can find me on Nuts of Erudite anywhere. Yeah.
Okay, Base, appreciate you. RJ, please share any final thoughts and where the folks at home can find you.
Let's make
Yeah,
you a
my
tank,
name's
bro,
RJ. I'm
shall
a
we?
nationalist and a Christian. You can find me at Real RJ Chismedia on Twitter.
All right, well, I appreciate you hanging in there with us. And then, Miss Synth, go ahead.
Understood.
So I'm Synth. I am Princess Cynthia on Twitter. I kind of have divorced myself from online stuff, but if you want to follow me, I do occasionally tweet dumb shit. I really appreciate being invited on. Thank you. It was really nice to talk to people who actually seemed to know what they were talking about, minus the one. But yeah, it was a really nice panel. Thank you for hosting it.
My very sincere pleasure. And then finally, definitely not the least of us, Miss Taftaj. Please shout yourself out and share any of your final thoughts.
Well, yeah, you can follow me, Taftaj1 on Twitter, or Tafarisms. That's my political one. I talk politics, and Twitter is a constant shit show, but it's fun, and I'm enjoying it. I think that this discussion was good. I think people surprised me in their willingness to cede ground. And I think that the real hard question of the future is how do we actually move into a world where people are willing broadly on a societal level to simultaneously acknowledge the issues and problems with this body of data, and also that the solution is to get more data without necessarily jumping to conclusions either way. I think that that would be really where I want to go. And my sense is that there needs to be some sort of consensus before we can do that. And I'm not exactly sure what the pathway is from here. But I was impressed and slightly, I don't know, faith in humanity slightly improved by the panel and by the people on the left here.
So just need
who
a
were
little bit of
able
speed to hit
engage
that up,
in really
so-
good faith. So I appreciate it.
Well, maybe if I got 6 smart motherfuckers to come into the room in order to define gender and sex for us, then we could move on a consensus. But we
Might
never
just
got
take
there.
longer.
It would actually take longer, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So I sincerely appreciate everyone here. If you want to dip out, go ahead and dip out. This is kind of going to be like the chill section of the panel where we kind of do like a post-mortem on the debate. Or we can move into a random memes, conversations, whatever. So if you want to talk about Princess Peach or speedrunning or Warhammer 40,000 or the gender trinary or whatever will get you canceled on Twitter, we can move into that.
Is anyone else playing Resident Evil 4? The demo's
Is that
out?
the remake for the fucking 20th goddamn time?
Yeah, but no, they're really doing it with the RE engine this time. I'm so super psyched about this.
But like, how is that? All right, I'm gonna be a douche canoe. How is that not the exact same fucking game over and over again? Like, I would love to do a playthrough of all the Halo video games, but how is this not just the same shit? Because haven't they released it like 3 times?
That is a great question, and let me assuage your worries here. This is not the same game at all. They took the ideas of the game and completely redid it with the best action camera system and the most cutting-edge graphics you will ever see in your life. It is phenomenal. Oh my god, I love
Tap
these
the
games.
brakes on the graphics part.
I'm one of the top speedrunners at Resident Evil 3 in the entire world. These are completely new games, so don't think it's just like them throwing a coat of paint on
That's my opinion when I see these things. Is it just looks like a high fidelity reskin of a game that people have already played.
So you could probably think of it more like the Final Fantasy remake, where they take like the essence of Final Fantasy VII, but they put it into a different like mechanic and not necessarily a graphical style. So it's like, if you liked the original game, this will be like playing the same game from a different perspective and a different like time in your life. So you might enjoy it differently, you know?
As much as I would like to talk about video games, I do unfortunately need to get going. I've been awake for around 34 hours now. So Counterpoints, thank you for having me on. Not So Erudite, it was a pleasure speaking with you again, as well as everyone else on the panel. Thank you for having me.
Thank you kindly, and then appreciate you, buddy. You have a good one. Thank you for DMing me after if it's.
Get fucking rejected, bitch.
No.
Yeah, you got fucking destroyed. Holy
He's like,
shit.
fuck you, Connor.
Yeah, fuck
you.
Idea. Okay, hold on. So RJ fucking flaked on a panel 2 weeks ago or something like that. No call, no show last thing. And my perspective on no call, no show, if you don't DM me, if you don't say it's a family emergency or whatever, I kind of take that as a fuck you. I'm not going to invite you.
I would never flake out on you, Connor.
So, but he was very polite. He sent me a DM. He's like, hey, I didn't realize the exact time, family emergency, blah, blah, blah. I want to come on the next one. So we got him in. As much as he didn't come in, I do respect him. You know, coming in, taking his barbs, all that kind of stuff, and the interviews to each other. I was hoping for a little bit more of a Christian nationalist spurg out, but we didn't get it tonight. So
he was.
He was very tired.
Well,
Yeah,
and
I
was
bedtime.
Destiny was pirating our content, so I normally do not invite other creators into the post show. If DGG wants somebody to come in and you guys agreed with it, we would. If he doesn't DM me back, I don't give a shit. We'll hang out amongst
So
ourselves
it's
and talk about
speed and strength.
So I got to laugh. I've been, I follow you on Twitter, Connor, and like seeing all the Destiny Islam stuff. I'm just like, I've seen this before, and like,
dude, he's gonna die. Oh my god.
He'd actually get murdered. Yeah, like that's entirely a possibility.
Like he's
He's
really
trying to get murdered.
Like,
yeah.
He's fucking around and he's gonna find out.
I don't know how many Muslims there are, and I'm not trying to like make a joke into a super serious thing, but Omar Mateen, the Pulse nightclub shooter, was from Miami, so there is at least a partial, population down there that might take offense to his Twitter shenanigans.
Can I admit that this may get me canceled, but I have laughed so hard at all of it. It's the worst joke, and I know he shouldn't be doing it, and I know it's not constructive, but the drama is, it's funny. It's funny. Oh my
He's
God.
a good drama farmer. He's very good at it.
Are we on Mr. Girl or Labloon, or are we on off Muslim?
Oh no.
I'm laughed out.
He's been insulting Islam.
I'm gonna talk to Chud about my
for
opinions
days,
on that, so.
and
I'm just happy I got a few screenshots on Tumblr of
he
my
really does
interactions
feel
with
like he's
Lab.
got a
That
death
was
wish.
fun.
Well, for the Muslims, I'll share my thing. What's actually crazy is Destiny and I are ships passing in the night when it comes to Islam. In 2016, I was like hard anti-immigration. You know, like there's gonna be poison M&Ms in the Skittles jar, and there's gonna be terrorism and all this bullshit. And then like basically what happened is since the war's over and there's been less terrorism, basically it's like, oh, Muslims are conservatives and they're family oriented and they love their families and they like eating a lot of food and like all that kind of shit. And the few Muslims that I know are super fucking based and down to earth, so maybe I like Muslims and I should be nicer to them and be less bigoted to them. Whereas Destiny is going back to 2016 anti-Islam shitpost to piss off the entire Muslim community. So yeah,
it's like he needs a certain number of fights just psychologically, and I admire it. I admire it. I do.
I mean, he is genuinely like probably the best person for bringing righties over to the left right now.
Yep,
He's genuinely doing like insane work with like the streams that he's going on, just like insanely right-wing streams, talking to those people, kind of making them look dumb in front of their audience, like he does with his rhetoric, and it's amazing. Actually, I really appreciate it. I think it's really great.
I think he's really strong on trans stuff too. I know that there are. I think that. Yeah, trans Twitter doesn't want to hear that, like there's a discussion to be had about trans women in sports. I personally don't care if a trans woman is like participating in a sport, but it's a hard political sell, right? And in my view, we need to be getting back to basics like healthcare, civil rights. This is a fight the right wants to have for a reason, and I just entirely agree with this take on that.
I think Destiny's like description of how trans people felt, I think like 4 years ago or something, on an all conservative panel is actually what cracked my egg, because I was like, fuck, I have all these feelings. Fuck, wait, fuck. And then just like after that, it was I mean, he's like amazing on trans issues the vast majority of the time.
We love you. We all desperately want to fuck you, okay?
So true.
Well, that's not true. That's not true for Turk.
That's not true.
Turk wants Hulk Hogan woman, okay? Turk wants Hulk Hogan.
True.
I see Destiny's pictures of him working out, and I'm just like, dude, come on.
True. Oh my God, Turk being true.
He maintains the dad bod.
Rude. Okay, well, so
At least he's got trip now. Okay, he's in fruit.
Yeah,
She's gonna eat protein.
DM me. She said that Erudite and her were planning on, talking. I was gonna make it provocative phrasing, but talking to Destiny afterwards, anyways. So I sent him a DM. I sent him an invite. So if you want to hang out with all of us, he can. If he's gonna circle jerk and play StarCraft 2 for a minute, he can. But anyways, the
Why does he pick such lame games? I mean,
Isn't he like professional in StarCraft?
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
if you were back in like the
Yes,
early
sir.
or the late 90s, early 2000s, come
Yes,
on.
sir.
Okay,
There are significantly better
Oh my god.
RTS games to
No,
play.
no.
I agree
StarCraft
with
2
that.
was amazing. Well,
Yeah,
I was
StarCraft
I was
is a
like
masterpiece.
There is
I was
no
I was
better
like late
RTS game.
2000s when I was like 10ish. And yeah, StarCraft 2 was like the greatest game ever. I played Brood War when I was growing up, like as a little kid, and like I just wanted StarCraft 2 to come out. And when StarCraft 2 came out, I played specifically the arcade because it was garbage at competitive, but it was a lot of fun as a game. It was amazing.
Well, okay. Do y'all know what StarCraft was based off of and was originally supposed to
Warcraft.
Yeah, Warcraft.
be? Warhammer.
Warhammer.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And Warcraft was originally supposed to be, Warhammer.
Do I not have a
Total
spy
War-
base
Games
built?
Workshop almost thought about suing Warcraft for IP infringement, but they couldn't do it because it was fantasy, and it was based off of Lord of the Rings as much as it was based off of Warhammer.
Well,
Yep,
I could be
those are
spreading
facts.
misinformation on the internet, but that's like half of the game of the internet, so based. But
True.
anyways, yeah. So y'all are labbed out or whatever. While
I mean, I'll
we're-
talk about Lav. I'm happy to do it.
Well, okay. So what I was gonna say is, I'm eagerly awaiting the Mr. Girl Manifesto.
Oh, God.
Even though
Me
I
too.
don't know,
Uh,
I don't know if I can read 105 pages.
I'm gonna pop
That
up.
is okay.
Okay.
That is
tough.
that's tough, but 105 pages is fucking tough. But
Oh, there's
then
the
I'm
spy
wondering if
thing,
the
okay.
goalpost shift is going to be from, like he's sexually abusive or rapist or whatever, to it's a cyclical, almost systemic abuse of smaller creators to bring them on stream and then talk shit to them. Because obviously,
Okay,
like that
yeah.
can be a harrowing experience, but.
Okay, I have to. You have to let me say this. Okay, just tell me if this event seems
There's no
kind
hands,
of
you can go
familiar for you, to you. So someone has some concerns about ethics in streaming. So they then go through someone's entire private sex life and start enlisting the internet to investigate every single person and interrogate it, and will then release it in this attempt to take them down and destroy their reputation. If you change the genders of this situation, it would be every feminist in the world would be 100% against it. And you know, just because it's Destiny who has said some stuff that I think is really, really terrible, I think if you really care about the principles, like your feminist principles, I think you've really got to be against this, in my view.
You should talk to BX Bullet. She goes through a lot of this same crap, and she's constantly attacked for this exact same reason. So
Yeah.
I just want to say, it is not abuse whatever Destiny is doing when he brings on like smaller streamers. All of these people want to come on. They all want to come on. This is like
Yes,
maybe he knows that there will be some bad outcomes because DGG is not the nicest to every single person. And like his community across all of the platforms is not always the nicest to any single person. But like it's not abuse if they come onto his stream and then afterwards like his community kind of doesn't like them or like they have a falling out.
Yeah, so the systemic.
I'm gonna dip as
so what
well.
I thought. Okay, check it.
Yes,
All right, bitches. We're not done. Hold on.
Yes, sir.
Just gotta swap over.
Yes, sir.
the medical ethics thing that I don't fully understand.
Yes, sir.
And that Erudite understands better. But my sense is that if there is a medical option that doesn't have like a lot of evidence backing it or a lot of strong evidence backing it, I think that, and potentially like some risks, and it seems like the demographic profile of people who are pursuing it is different from in previous cohorts. My sense is that there needs to be some sort of like restriction until you can get that figured out, rather than letting it continue at the same increasing rate.
Yes, sir.
And I think that Erudite has a sort of different perspective on that. I'm not sure.
Sure thing. Yes, sir.
No, she necessarily has to have the same opinion.
True. Because
Wait,
I'm,
also,
I'm,
how the fuck do you pronounce your name?
who?
You. Everyone is saying erudite now, but you correct me so many times that it's erudite. It's erudite. Now literally every single fucking person.
The
Also,
only question that
by
matters
the
to me
way-
is, do you know my first name yet?
Yes, sir.
Kyla.
You fucking piece of shit.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It is Kyla. Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah, it
Fuck
is.
you. I was right. Then fuck
Okay.
you.
Yes, sir.
Fair enough.
Fluff you, I was right. Yep. Mhm.
You're all good.
Yes, sir.
Steven said you had to agree with
Yes,
that, but
sir.
I'm not. Do you?
Yes, sir.
Why do you think I need to agree with
I
that?
still haven't done this fluffing mission, dude.
I guess that's a question.
Oh my god,
I don't-
so many clicks.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm on.
So
I'm
many
my brain's in
clicks.
17 different directions right now. Okay. Why? What did you just ask? Sorry, say that one more time. On
You
whether or
said-
not you would agree with that? No. Yeah. What? We all go.
You were
I think that. Okay, Erudite, you go.
You were at, so she outlined basically her concerns about the limitations of the research and why basically as a response she's basically like landed at her position that she has, and you said that I must then agree with that, correct?
Yeah. The main point that she was saying was that the evidence right now for trans in kids is pretty weak. So to have this implemented as like a standard of care, probably too far. But like, experimental treatments or used in studies or research is probably fine. I think we probably all agree on that.
That's an amazing interpretation. Yes, thank you, Stephen.
So the reason why I differ with that is because I would say all theoretical speculation and all of the evidence that we do have is suggestive in the direction that HRT for kids is good for them, right? Specifically talking about older
there's two
HRTs.
huge issues. One is that if it is good, I've read recent studies, you can read, but if it is good, the effect size I think is quite small. Right.
So it depends on the study that you're talking about. A lot of the effect sizes, like if you're talking about like the De Vries in 2014, for example, and which is the Dutch model, for those who aren't sure who that is. In the De Vries model, they did this selection bias necessarily to try to limit confounding factors. So they selected for kids that had basically no comorbidities with other mental health disorders, and were in many ways kind of some of like the least severe cases of individuals, and then measured whether HRT affected them long term. And there's a number of really positive effects on HRT. Taff and I talked about this. The most compelling to me is the CBCL and the ABCL, which are like the same shit, but one for
That's a little bit. Do you think that
the
I feel like that selection criteria might be a little bit problematic, though. No?
So specifically, why it would be problematic is actually more suggestive of my direction. So if you give interventions to people who are less severe, you always expect a less robust effect size, right? Because if you have somebody at
don't. I understand what you're saying. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to. I understand exactly what you just said. But what you're assuming is that those comorbidities would respond similarly to HRT or would all point in the same direction, but that's not necessarily true, right?
So what we would expect typically, this is going to be theoretical speculation, which is why I said it is obviously reasonable to come to either conclusion. I've just come to the opposite. Hold
on, wait. I'm fighting you on the fact that you just said that it would bolster your argument, and I'm saying that it would have no effect on the argument, and it could just as plausible go completely in the opposite ways for one of the other ways.
That would be very shocking to me.
Not at all. I don't think so. Let's hypothesize for a moment, okay? We have a large group of people, okay? And we're gonna X out 90% of them with comorbidities to see if HRT is an effective method of treating this particular gender dysphoria, whatever the fuck you're treating, right? Trans sake, right? When we do that, we see that the effect is big, and we see that it's statistically significant. We like this study, it's good, okay? We have a big effect, statistically significant, we've got all this, it looks good, okay? But the problem is that it might be the fact that you've controlled away comorbidity in a larger group that could be confounding whether or not HRT would be good. So for instance, hypothetically, let's say that you controlled away 90% of mental illness, and of those people that are mentally ill, let's say that the likeliness of them actually being trans is far lower than in the 10% group you cut away that doesn't have that comorbidity. That would be a case where what would actually happen once you roll those people back in again to the treatment, it would move in exactly the opposite direction.
Correct. Right. So
that's why I'm only saying, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that it doesn't necessarily move you one way or another, I don't think. It's just something to think about.
So let me bridge you as to why I made the assumption that I think it would bolster the effect. So what I'm basing this off of is actually what we see in forensic treatment with high-risk teens. What we see with high-risk teens is the more severe they are in, say, like criminal actions and antisociality in general, the more severe they are, the more comorbidities that they obviously have as well. And what we see is what we used to do is control similarly to this De Vries study, where you have the least kind of comorbid, complex teens receiving treatment, and you'd have pretty minimal effect sizes, and that led the entire forensic field to assume that basically giving like rehabilitative justice to kids was pretty low in effect size, kids and adults. And what we actually found is that when we expanded this to include high comorbidities, and then we did lots of research, like tons and tons of data to basically look at whether or not rehabilitation on these complex teens was actually beneficial on like later recidivism and stuff like this, what we saw is that actually the effect size that was so small that it was not clinically non-significant and statistically non-significant grew, because you were including a much more severe group of individuals into your case study, and then the effects of the treatment were more effective. And so
I understand what you're saying, but the effect there, the problem is that we're talking about recidivism and children like committing like violent crimes and stuff. There is no contention around whether or not they're having recidivism. There's no contention around whether or not they're committing violent crime. You don't have a cohort of these people that might not actually be violent criminals, but were like falsely charged, right?
Right.
In order for your study, in order for that analogy to make sense, that would have to be like, I did a study with 100 people, 90 of them were falsely charged, but I got rid of those 90 people, and then on the 10 people, I put them through all these juvenile delinquency programs, all these rehabilitation programs, and the effects were actually really good on their lives. Now I'm gonna roll back in the other 90 and try it. Well, in that case, if these guys weren't actually criminals, and they were just like people that got falsely convicted, you might actually have way worse outcomes enrolling people that were falsely convicted in juvenile detention programs and these types of other things to prevent recidivism, because that initial thing wasn't even there. That's why I'm saying it's not analogous here. I don't think at all.
Sort of. So one thing that is analogous that I'm looking at is I'm comparing recidivism to specifically suicide attempts, because recidivism is basically the reason why it's so good to predict is it's a yes or no. Either you do commit a crime or you don't. It's pretty like, although there is that gray area of like you could commit a crime and not be charged, but we kind of just go off.
I understand
that. So I'm comparing it to the suicide attempt.
Yeah,
stuff.
but what I'm saying is we pull back on a macro level, we just ask a basic question, right? The problem is I would expect
waiting so
HRT
long for my
to
entire
reduce
base to get up and running.
Suicidality is my hypothesis. To reduce suicidality in kids that are actually trans.
Like it's been like an hour, man.
Comorbidities that are existing in kids that are quote unquote trans. Those comorbidities might actually impair your ability to determine who is trans. That's the confusing thing, I think.
Yes, I would agree with that. So I understand you're saying the sample population is different.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
agree.
And the second thing that comes in is that the cohort has changed dramatically.
Yes.
From sad, lonely people that are murdering themselves because they feel horrible to
Sure
like
thing.
fucking 80% of trans people today are NBs with pierced noses and blue hair on college
Yes.
campuses that are all AFABs.
So-
And that dramatic change in cohort is also indicative that there's and I think that was the reason why I think it was Sweden, right, that dropped, or was it the UK that dropped their
Sweden, Finland.
Sweden, Finland, yeah, okay. The reason why they dropped is because the cohort changed so much that it's like, ooh, hold on, well now we're not sure anymore.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So this is the issue with the data. I think there's a lot of reasonable assumptions to come to. It's possible that mine is unreasonable. I'm not seeing it, I suppose. When I look at, for example, like the Andrews 2022 study, where you've got this clumping of basically trans kids and non-binary kids all together, I agree that doing this kind of this confounding thing. What I'm saying though is that I suspect that if you cleaned that up and you took kind of the most severe cases of trans individuals, it wouldn't be surprising to me, and it would match all of our theoretical speculation about gender dysphoria, and it would match, in my understanding of the adult samples, it would match more what we're finding in adult populations, that the more severe cases of people who have lots and lots of gender dysphoria, they're probably what we would say, like, quote unquote, the most like actual trans, these people are actually going to probably benefit the most from HRT, and therefore it's going to be affecting our effect sizes in the direction I'm suggesting.
To be clear, in the Dutch study,
The study doesn't matter. I'm sorry, hold on. The study doesn't matter. We need to get our brains aligned here on this, on the actual like research part of this, okay? Because I don't know if you're not understanding me or I'm not understanding you, okay? What the debate that we're having is, let's say that we've got 100 people and we think all of them have cancer, but only 10 of them have cancer, and we want to, and the 90 that have fake cancer have like a ton of comorbidities. Like they might be malnourished, they might have autoimmune disease, they might have a bunch of other things that mask as neoplastic syndrome or other kind of cancer-related things, right? Well, let's say that we say, okay, let's get rid of all these kind of weaker cases. Let's take the 10 most obvious strong cancer cases and pump them full of chemo, irradiate the fuck out of them, and now we see that their outcomes are really good. Well, from there, we're safe to assume that the effect size is huge here. If we bring on all the people with the comorbidities, well, now it's going to be even better. But that's not true, because of that 90 people that we cut away. We've cut away so much confounding stuff that might be masked to the fact that those people don't have cancer. If only 10 out of the 90 we cut away have cancer, 80 out of 90 of those people are now getting a treatment that's totally inappropriate, and now our effect size would reverse, and we would expect to see negative outcomes.
Sure.
Which I think is possible.
So I understand. The issue is, unlike cancer, we're talking about mental illness. It is wholly possible that HRT will be used on an individual who has the quote-unquote fake cancer, and they will improve, because more about what has to do with like mental well-being is your interpersonal experience. So this is a whole other confounding factor, which is that if you believe that you're trans, even if, say, by some magic one, we find out you literally are not, it is still possible that HRT will have positive benefits for you because it's mapping onto what you feel like you need, and it's creating a more cohesive like internal sense of self.
That would probably be a I don't know if there's a name for this in research, where you create a positive outcome that is undesired. I think that would probably not be an outcome that we would
Well, the problem with mental
there's two problems, okay, and we're kind of speaking past each other because two things are happening right now, right? In the study that sparked this discussion, the effect size was small, and the reason why it was small is because the cohort of people that was selected for it was so carefully selected that they didn't have a lot of mental health issues in the first place. So part of that is you're probably selecting people who are going to benefit a lot, that are like actually trans in Destiny's example, but you're also selecting people who are just like, their benefit is going to be relatively small.
So long until we get it.
Like, you can't really improve that much. So if the effect size is small, that doesn't really mean that it's like going to be small for everyone. It just means that like for these people who are very well selected, both for transness and also for like general mental health and well-being, the effect size is small, right? So like you're both kind of correct, but you're like touching on different parts of the selection process.
Yeah, I would agree with that, which is why this is the issue that I get to at the very end of the debate. I'm not sure if you watched it, which is, what do we do about the policy, right? When I think it is reasonable to presume that HRT maybe isn't benefiting kids, and I also think it's reasonable to presume that it is, right? The data is just so messy across the board, which is why like I don't even understand the socket. It's like blowing my mind that it exists.
I think that's great. I think it's fine. It's a cutting-edge new treatment for a cutting-edge new social phenomenon. I would expect the data to be all across the board. But I think the reasonable thing to do is that's then not implemented as policy at the country level or whatever, and instead it's reserved for like, these are experimental research things. If all else fails, or if there's some special selection criteria that you go through, just like how we would test any other drug under phase 2 or phase 3 trials, you would go that route. That's what
Or if people are willing to enter a study that like they know that there's a chance that they're going to be, put into the group that gets therapy, and then they also have a chance of being put into HRT, right? Like if you are restricting it to people.
Look, I'm already at 71 out of 100, and I still haven't been able to do this mission.
To make it so that there's a little bit of control and restriction, so you're not just shuttling everyone down the same path.
Sure. I guess the part that I have a really hard time biting is that all of the evidence and theoretical speculation suggest that HRT should be beneficial specifically to trans individuals. And so like, I'm not talking about maybe like major medical interventionism at 16 where you're like doing like major surgeries. I think that's probably not a very wise idea. But I don't know how I stand on the side and say like, we probably shouldn't like allow people to access, especially if it's like between doctor, parent, and like specialists saying that like we should be allowing kids on like puberty blockers and stuff like this. Because like, I agree that the research is in its infancy. The issue is, in my estimation, all the theoretical speculation suggests that it should be beneficial, and the like crappy data, albeit crappy, but the issue is like, just because it's crappy doesn't mean that it's not suggestive of a direction.
Sure, but while that's
Problems.
true, I think that you have to keep in mind on the research side, everything you're saying is fine. But when we come over to the policy side, we have to be very, very, very careful going down a potentially bad road, right?
Yes.
Because if you push a little bit too hard, the whiplash might break your neck.
Right.
If we do start to get all these stories and all of a sudden you're getting a ton of people coming out saying like, oh, like I thought I was trans, now I'm 26, I don't. It got into the surgery stage, like I took puberty blockers, blah, 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 blah. Like the blowback from that would be severe, I think, which is why the drug question and everything needs to be, I feel like, and I heard this even come up on your panel, and I feel like I've actually gotten most conservatives for this. And I could even be wrong, and I just don't know. And I fell prey to the conservative fucking bias or whatever. But like, it feels like this statement of like relentless affirmation is fucking cancer. And it feels like that's pervasive in these communities of like going to like a gender therapist or whatever. That they're not there to be critical. They're not there to actually help you figure out what your problems are. They're there to say, yes, here are your drugs, you're trans, absolutely. I'm only going to relentlessly reaffirm you.
So then part of the culture is that if you go against that, you're going to be labeled as transphobic. And that's like the politicization, right?
Yep.
Like, and I think both me and Brianna,
Copy that, boss.
I don't know. I think most reasonable people agree that the politicization is just total cancer.
Yes.
Because it prevents us from actually addressing these issues and really having conversations about them. Because no one wants to be labeled transphobic. But on like the other side, like we have people who have no knowledge of transness or medicine who are like weighing in just because they get like a gross feeling in their stomach.
Yes, sir.
And that's like also just a complete disaster
sir.
for the whole discussion.
Boom, we got a hacker.
I mean, I agree with all of these like hesitations, like absolutely. And this is why when I look at the SOC 8, it sounds really good. And I do this bridge of, I know that there's oftentimes a very big gap between like what is recommended as treatment and what is like lived out. And I'm trying to balance this, for example, with like what the trans community is saying their experience is with getting care, which is that it's incredibly difficult. It's pretty much like cost prohibitive, like in and of itself, and that it can actually be decently difficult to get like access to this. What I don't know is when they're saying prohibitive, do they mean that it's hard to get diagnosed with gender dysphoria to then get treated, or is it just a really long wait time? Because like wait times in and of itself are like one thing, but what I'm really wanting to be cautious about, and I like echoed this caution, is that fake cancer group? Are we vetting them out properly? I think that that's a really important question.
The other issue is that like, if someone's not satisfied with their gender clinic, a lot of times, at least in the US, you can go elsewhere, right?
That's the problem with all of medicine, unfortunately.
Yeah, but what it results in is that like if you are trying to do a study, like you're trying to run a control group and like an HRT group, and you're trying to really figure this out, well, you'll ask like these young people, do you want to participate in this? And they'll just say no, and they'll just like go somewhere else. And that's why it's really hard to find participants for these more expansive, well-done studies. This is actually something that like came up in Britain where they were trying to do these better experiments and people just like weren't willing to do them. So I do think there needs to be like some sort of coordinated attempt to get better data, because otherwise people are just going to filter to whoever is going to write the prescription.
Yes, I understand this. I guess the main thing that I get caught on is basically, I know where the evidence is at. I'm speculating essentially that it's going to probably fall on the side that HRT is beneficial for transgender people. It probably improves outcomes. However, I'm also suspecting, because basically no data on psychological intervention, that psychological interventions are also going to be significantly beneficial and will probably reduce the amount of people seeking medical care. That would be my guess of what's going to like turn out in the data if we ever.
Yeah, true. We just have to be careful with what we're talking about. I think the problem isn't. I personally don't think that HRT is going to be beneficial to every single person who says they're trans. Probably going to be beneficial to every single person that is trans, but our screening process for that right now seems to be not the best. I think that's the issue.
Yeah,
I think that's where the psychosocial or psychological
seriously,
interventions I think are probably more important and need to be pushed more. But and again, I can only go by what I read online. Like it feels like there are a lot of trans people in communities that I read that like if a psychologist questions you, they label those doctors as transphobes. Like I've seen for British people that they will call out. I think I see this on when I was doing my Capitals article, I ran into I think a Reddit post on this even, where people like don't go to this doctor, don't go to this doctor. Like they'll ask you a lot of questions, they'll do this, like do this doctor, they'll just like give you blah blah blah. Or if you even get a question about it, like people push back on it, right? And then some people shortcut that process completely and start ordering drugs from Brazil. So yeah, that seems to be a problem that culturally we've kind of, and I always point back to this god awful, and I don't know if it's still popular, it probably is, that self-ID concept should have been killed in the cradle. The idea that it ever became a popular idea for anything to do with trans is like fuck this whole process up so hard.
Right, and Taff and I talked about this previously, but I think the lumping of the non-binary group into the trans group specifically is like creating such a problem now, and you can't really undo it because.
Let's be more specific. It's the lumping of the trans trenders with the transgenders. That's the problem.
Yes,
it's
because
the AFABs that want attention versus the people that actually have issues.
Well, clinically, when we're looking, so like one of the best articles, which even like Taff and I will still agree, there are issues with it, right? One of the best articles, the biggest issue with this article is that it's just labeling non-binary, and the issue is that there are a number of youth specifically who are trans but label non-binary because they're typically in a transition period of figuring out.
I already have
what
another
they are
research
anyways,
lab.
right?
What the fluff?
From my understanding of the title non-binary, it becomes a bit of like a safety holding net for people as they're trying to figure out, because like understandably,
it's like people call themselves queer, right?
Yes.
It's just like, I don't know exactly, I'm queer, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so like when we're looking at like studies of like suicidality and stuff like that, we do see like like heightened levels, for example, in kids who are on HRT tend to perform a little bit better on like suicidal ideation and stuff like that. Or Taf can correct me on which one it is now on this specific study. I don't know. I'm just not convinced that if you remove the fakers, that we would see a decrease in effect size. I suspect if we remove the fakers, we would see an increase in effect size on like suicidality and HRT specifically.
Yeah.
I think we all agree with that. If you remove the fakers, I would expect the effect size to dramatically increase. But that whole concept of like social contagion, social contagion, that conservatives and everybody are always fucking talking about the transtenders there. That's what they're worried about, right?
Yes.
And
they should be.
Also, changing so much. Yeah, I think it's legit.
I think it's slightly more complicated because there's probably some people, if gender identity disorder or dysphoria is on a spectrum, there's going to be some people who could probably live their lives and be okay with not transitioning, who, because they're exposed to the internet and all these people who are telling them, you need HRT or you'll kill yourself, this is really bad, etc., etc. They're exposed to all of the social media that's going to inflame their body issues. These people, I think, are going to have really severe issues when, in a different era, without the same social media use, or maybe with therapy, they could be fine without transitioning. But because they do have some legit underlying issue, even if it's a small one, they might get like some benefit or kind of like a wash benefit from HRT. And then those people, like, what do you tell them? They're not being hurt by HRT, but they're not really being benefited from it either. And so I think it's sort of complicated too, where you have people who have like half cancer in this scenario.
Yeah, or they're getting a benefit, but it's like, should you be? Actually, here's a really interesting question ethically that I don't know the answer to. Let's say that there was a person who, this is highly unlikely, I'm just gonna say, but let's say the person who doesn't have cancer, but they truly think they do, and we put that person on chemotherapy. What if they have a rough chemo session, but afterwards, all of their health indicators are actually improved, and actually do feel better after the chemotherapy?
Well, like, this is the tea. Like, tea is just happy drug. Like, it's just like, if you inject tea into people, they feel stronger, because they literally are, and they often experience high levels of happiness. So when you're looking at like female to male transitions, right, one thing that you're gonna have to check for is how much of this is responsible just by tea, how much is because of gender dysphoria, and also how do we even parse these two things apart, and do we care to parse them apart? Which, at a policy level, if we're paying for it as a public, I imagine we would want to parse those out. At a private level, if it's privately paid, I imagine we wouldn't care that much.
What is the answer to that, by the way? I don't know what the correct answer is. So if you give somebody a treatment that shouldn't work, but it's like effectively working as a placebo, like, do you continue to give that person that treatment? Is that ethical?
Right. I mean, that was my original question, is like, how do we know what these comorbidities, if somebody has high levels of anxiety and like just body dysmorphia, because it's like a girl who really hates her body, she goes on HRT, she's getting tea, so she feels fucking great, and so she reports that she likes her body after. The issue with the flexibility of the brain is like, probably at some point she would just like her body more because she feels more happy because she's taking tea, and like.
And then the social factor too of like, if she wants to be a woman and she feels like it, and now she's identifying it as people are saying it, and now she's got like a whole new group of people she identifies with, and she's like, that could theoretically, I mean,
there's also
if you can get like a normal middle class like brown Muslim in fucking Europe to join ISIS, I don't see why you couldn't recruit like a teenager to be like, oh, like I'm trans now, and actually this does make my life feel a lot better. That's possible.
Yeah, like totally discounting the social contagion theory basically requires you argue that teens, they're like vulnerable to social influence in pretty much every area of life, but for some reason like not for this one exception. And I think that's another big problem, is that if you have someone who's taking tea, they feel pretty good, they're in this honeymoon phase perhaps of transition, and they're posting pictures and they're posting tea voice updates and they're flexing their muscles. People are seeing that on social media, and they're seeing like the best examples of that, of the people who are really doing good, and then that later encourages more people to pursue it. And so like, even if you have like a beneficial effect or like a null effect, like let's say that like no one actually is hurt mentally by this. I don't know if that's true, probably not. There's probably gonna be some people who are hurt, but even if no one is, just the fact that people might pursue this because they see other people having good results might lead a lot of people to be medicalized when they otherwise don't need to be, right? Where they'd be fine either way. And that's also not a good result. So like, I think that when we talk about, well, there's probably no indication of like an actual negative effect, I do think that like unnecessarily medicalizing people probably is something we want to avoid.
Probably, yes. Especially specifically if there's like burden on care of like long term. So like the biggest issue with puberty blockers is that like right now, from what we can see, it doesn't seem to be a huge detriment on like health. The issue is we haven't really been able to watch it for like 40 years, and specifically the age range, right? Even the SOC 8 is very explicit that we don't really know the long term effects of puberty blockers like plus 10 years. And so like that's the more important question to me, as being like, if we're starting to see really long term like later effects, what do we do about that? And I don't know the answer, because I don't know how to contend it against like trans kids struggling right now. Like this is like the constant conundrum of like most medical.
I mean, there's nothing unique about that. This is prove everything. Like you would treat this. I don't actually think there's anything difficult here at all. You would treat this just as you do like every other drug, right? Like for instance, for I can use Alzheimer's drugs, right? Like you'll try Alzheimer's drugs. Some patients are in it, some patients are not. But like you wouldn't say that like, oh my God, like these people with Alzheimer's are suffering. We have to give everybody the trial drugs. You would never say that. I think what they do is in a study, if it does seem to be very clear that a drug is efficacious, they'll switch the people from the placebo group off of it, and then they'll give them the actual drug. But otherwise, you just continue on to like you actually observed a real science. Like there are people suffering right now from a lot of diseases that are being actively researched in the United States, but that doesn't mean we throw all of them on like state mandated or state supported theoretical treatment. You never do that in any other case.
Yeah, I mean, that's reasonable. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there is any other case. Because yeah, I mean...
I think the closest case I can kind of think of for limited stuff would probably be probably SSRIs. I don't know if we were 100% sure if that was a good idea either.
Yeah, I mean, all this medicated stuff is like such a big question.
Well, the medicated, the mental stuff, really hard. Medicining out the brain, like medicining your brain to fix like psychological problems is very, very, very difficult.
Sure thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. That might be, like, I think, Taff, you were saying, like, specifically the language that I was using about, like,
let's do missions again.
like, the fear
After
fear
building
stuff
up an entire
is,
another base.
Yeah, then that, because you're basically pointing out that when I was
talking
talking about that may be, like, an issue in, like, the language that I'm using specifically, if I'm understanding you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that, like, when you build up the fear, I think it makes people sometimes more vulnerable to these things. Like, if you're telling them that the only way they can survive is with this medication.
Roger that.
I think it makes them a lot of times less likely to pursue other things that are going to happen.
Understood.
It kind of treats HRT as panacea. Though, to be clear, I think war, like, this is not a super big problem for you. It was just like one line you said that kind of made me feel that way.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I'm just,
yes, sir.
trying to be good faith. Yeah, I mean,
Pilots.
Yes,
fuck. I mean, this is like the issue that I like the trans issue specifically is I just like, I have a really big soft spot for like the actual struggles that they experience. And so there's this element of like trying to impress the like lived experience of specifically
No, I don't think so. I think, or I'm not saying I doubt you, but I'm saying that like, I think what we have to say is that like ethics exist in medicine for a very particular reason, and it's to make these types of difficult things like easier to deal with, right? So we don't have to do this on like a case-by-case basis. I think it's okay to have empathy for trans people that are suffering that might not be able to get attention right now. That's fine to have empathy for it. But the ethics exist to guide us to show that we should have empathy for the other side too. That there might be people that are genuinely like desperately seeking these drugs because they've been told that they need them, because they've been told that if they don't go on then their lives are going to be miserable, because they know that they're trans, because one day they woke up and they felt alien in their own body and then their favorite creator online said they're trans, right? We need to have empathy for those people too. I think it's just harder to have empathy for them because they're used as like either conservative props so often or...
Well, also to rant about that, it's really frustrating. I think for a lot of people, especially detransitioners and people who have had bad experiences, that the only people who will reach out to them are conservatives. And so, like, I know this one person who ended up in this area where she was really talking about detransition a lot, and now she's surrounded by people who, and I don't know if I should be saying she, but they're surrounded by people who, like, hate them for now being, like, a gender non-conforming man. Because the only people who would listen to them were conservatives. The only people who like didn't think they were like totally transphobic and evil for talking about this were conservatives. And then they find themselves in this really difficult situation where they're with all these people that now just hate them for a different reason. And that is something I deal with too, which is just really, really frustrating. It's feeling like you have no home anywhere in the political spectrum.
It just sucks that it requires like all of these specialized things, and it's like, damn, son, so I'm gonna have to sit here and wait even longer.
No, I mean, I would definitely agree with that. I think like the empathy
this is what I was talking about
not shown to these transitioners or people like who have concerns, or the kids that, for example, like might be misdiagnosed and then set on like a pretty horrific medical like 10 years because like all of these surgeries are like super invasive, especially if you're doing like any of this genital reassignment. I think it's gross the way that it's treated. I think I get caught up specifically when I think about the way that I hear like conservatives talking about trans people, just like sends off so many flags that,
It's because the conservatives don't have a seat at this table because they have no compassion for them. Like the conservatives don't care. The problem is that like it should be genuinely a question of like medically, ethically, like what's the best thing to do to help the most amount of people. But for conservatives, it's more a matter of like what fits my political ideology. That's where the conversation starts. And stops.
It does feel that way.
It always feels bad to entertain ideas that even sound like they're conservative in nature for this. So conservatives have zero compassion for trans. They don't like them, care about them. They can give a fuck about them. But for a lot of conservatives, like you can literally nail them down on this. Like, what if there was like evidence showing that these things were producing better outcomes for blah blah blah? And a lot of conservatives will just tell you, like, I've heard some people who are like, oh, I still wouldn't do it. Like, I think a man is a man. And okay, so you don't give a fuck. This is, like, you can masquerade as somebody caring about the outcomes or medical shit, but you don't really, because if the science showed another thing, you just wouldn't trust the study, you wouldn't trust the institution. It'd be the same way that they treat all the coronavirus vaccines. So. I think that's why I've heard so much to even like entertain this side of the conversation. It's because it's almost like ubiquitously inhabited by people with zero compassion.
Yeah, I mean, all of this, like, especially when I was going through the evidence today, one of my biggest frustrations is I'm not super interested in seeing, like, these alt-right, like, pieces of shit walk away being like, yeah, see, trans isn't real. And it's like, nobody's saying that. That's
Yeah,
not at all what any of this is saying.
you're not
In fact,
wrong,
what
dude.
most of this
You're not
evidence is
wrong.
weakly suggesting is that HRT helps trans people. Like, that's really what the evidence is showing. The issue is that there's a large gap in the literature about like psychological interventions and stuff like that need to be like looked into.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 8. So that'd be I'd leave 3
There's
left.
only one
Okay.
type of eel.
Right. Based.
We're just so
Doc, who's
brilliant.
that
and
blue
we're
haired
so-
Three left
SJW you're
there.
talking with? Seems
All those dumb
Tell him
conservatives.
he's a
and
fragile
progressives
woke
who are
skull
just in my
leftoid.
case. They're not. Feels good, guys.
That's real good.
7
You disagree? Go ahead.
spies.
No, I agree. I just want to circle jerk a little.
So we get 3 computer dudes from there.
Are you on a transphobic arc right now, or are you being more chill? What's going on with you?
Listen,
Yes, sir.
You're on a transphobic arc. Yeah.
Twitter is
Sure
not a
thing.
good website.
Yes, sir.
I will sometimes
Consider it
have
done.
bad
Yes,
takes
sir.
and then compulsively defend them when I should
Copy
probably
that,
just
boss.
walk
It's the only
away.
way to do it.
And
Okay.
I could be like, you know what? I phrased that wrong. But like my little brain is like, no, double down. These people are fucking like annoying. And like you could make this argument. And if you
All
are
right.
really bad faith,
Yes,
like
sir.
you could actually like get out of this position.
That's not the
because-
little brain. That's the big brain.
That's the big brain.
I don't know if she should be taking her advice from you right now. Holy shit.
I've got the best Twitter presence ever. Okay.
Yeah.
I will say, yeah, no, you are. I think
lost
I'm
on Twitter
sort of
now.
like
Yes,
you,
sir.
in that I can deal with like an enormous amount of online hate. It's just like it doesn't bother me that much.
Then
And so that's why like the part of my brain is like, yeah, be annoying, but I don't know, not always good
Yes,
because
sir.
then you look dumb if you go too far. So issues.
Okay, what would
Where
we do
is
if we
it?
found out that if you gave people T, specifically like female to male transitions, even if it wasn't an actual trans issue, if it remedied most of the like major mood disorders that like a lot of these like much more severe, probably mentally, because if they're not trans but they feel like they're trans because they're so mentally ill, then they're probably severely mentally
Yes,
ill.
sir.
What if we find out that T is one of the most effective ways to reduce these mood disorders? Do we transition them anyways?
Yes, sir.
And like
For
continue
transition,
that?
Here's a
take it as like a
question.
fucking vitamin.
Will it increase their
A vitamin of T?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if I just put them on like a regimen like you would for whatever. Yeah, and we
Like
have to
a
look at other
low
effects
dose.
like random shit.
Well,
Yeah,
like, what if
why
the
not?
effect size is more robust than, for example, like anxiety meds? Because anxiety meds work and they are statistically significant and clinically significant, but they're actually not as robust as like we would like them to be, right? A lot of anxiety meds, a lot of people build tolerance and have to be like constantly up and up and up to like maintain the benefits of the mood disorder being treated.
Yeah, thoughts on that, Destiny?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, it's the best thing. You put it on a mood disorder. That's not unique at all, right? We already prescribe people like antipsychotics for
Yes,
some like
sir.
cluster B or something.
Well, the issue is if you prescribe them T, then they're also going to have like at least some secondary sexual characteristics that shift and change. They're going to put on more muscle mass. They're going to start growing body hair everywhere.
Everyone should be a man. That's my position. Men are just superior. Sounds like a world I want to live in.
No thoughts? Okay.
Destiny agrees. His silence is equivalent.
Hey!
I mean, that's what you would. I mean, if there are like those other side effects, I mean, like, it's hard because you're asking me to conceive of a world where I'm breaking some of my fundamental assumptions about human beings. I would assume that humans can be happy and healthy as like men and women, and not everybody has to become a man. We're not literally in some type of
Drones?
era where, like the rib was taken out and we're trying to put it back in.
Well, not
Like,
everyone.
vitamin E or some shit, right?
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about girls who say, again, we've got a magic one we can test. We go, yeah, you're literally not trans. You're just severely mentally ill. But they believe that they're trans. They believe that they're in their own body. They have high
excuse
levels
me.
of body dysmorphia. And if we gave those individuals, so they're basically people who have fake cancer, but if you give them chemotherapy, all of their health markers will go up. What do we do with these individuals?
Yeah, I mean, I imagine you'd give them the drugs.
Well,
Seems-
if it is
it's hard
really
to imagine
robust.
that would be like the best way to do it, but I guess it
Yeah.
would. What we're doing.
Because the other question is like, if you can do this less invasively or with a lower cost, obviously you would prefer that.
Or like lower dosage or something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So like, if you could
All
get
right,
the
well,
same
I gotta
effect,
make a
but
scientist,
through
so
psychotherapy,
screw it. Let's
and
do
the
it.
psychotherapy lasts, you put them through CBT, and that lasts like 3 years, and you have the benefit, and that lasts for much longer than like a lifetime dose of testosterone. That might be preferable.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
CBT. Everyone, whenever I say CBT, they always think of cock and ball torture.
Really?
And I never think of this. I feel like it's the much less obvious interpretation of it. Like, I feel like cognitive
I think everybody can do a little
therapy-
good cock and ball torture. They gotta
Okay.
improve a lot of outcomes.
Maybe so. Maybe so.
Do you know any unhappy people that have cock and ball torture regularly? Probably not.
No, it's a good point. And I bet if you did like a survey of people who love cock and ball torture and like stand by it,
Bet they're
and you
happier.
ask them like, do you think cock and ball torture improves your life? I bet they would say yes.
Probably.
So.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
You gotta really commit to that.
Cock and
Probably
ball
hard to take.
torture. Lovely.
Okay,
Yeah,
base,
someone's,
did we
like,
solve
strung
things?
up.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
head
I
out
think
otherwise.
so.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm too. Okay. Hold on.
Hey.
I love you.
Right. Wow.
I need more research.
I like the non-drama streams. Oh, damn. Well, I guess I basically have to fully revisit my should youth get it? The answer is yes, but under like high level of measure and scrutiny.
Yes.
Circle jerk? Not really.
Agreed.
How did it go? It went good. I feel like kind of like did well on the panel, and then afterwards had basically a large portion of my viewpoint dismantled.
Well, that's what happens when you listen to someone who has decent arguments. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Shit gets real.
Yeah, I don't know how to shake the fact that all the evidence is directional in one direction, which is that HRT benefits them. And I agree that we should be more stringent about who gets it,
Done,
obviously.
boss.
Never said that it shouldn't. But
Yes, sir.
I can't shake the fact that all of theoretical speculation, all of the evidence to this point suggests something. So I don't really feel like I need to move. I would just basically
Sure thing.
agree
You go
that
strength.
probably the way that we're delivering
that,
right now
boss.
is
Yes, sir.
not very wise. I don't know if like outright banning
Sure
is the
thing.
correct response, but it's understandable
Yes, sir.
that conservatives have come here because of like the paucity of literature on it. Not that conservatives actually know, but yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Researchers are incredibly
Not
biased.
that
When I'm
they
talking about like
know.
lack of studies, it's not
Roger that.
lack of data. It's not like lack of
Yes,
studies.
sir.
It's lack of good studies because it's so fucking
Okay.
biased.
Understood. Yes,
That's a tough
sir.
one, but I'm glad everyone was mostly understanding.
Roger that. Roger that. Yes, sir.
When a certain statistic starts going down, I'll agree. Well, the issue is that even the suicide statistics are going down.
Consider it
Like
done, boss.
the evidence is showing that it decreases. That is what the evidence is showing. It is not as significant as like we would like it to be, but I
Roger
don't know
that.
if that's because of like we
Yes,
said.
sir.
Like the problem is that my frustration is it feels like maybe I should go back in. It feels like we didn't actually answer the question of
Yes, sir.
are these confounding individuals actually going to increase or decrease the effect size of
sir.
suicidality? Because if we put in more severe mentally ill
Yes,
cases,
sir.
there's like the fake cancer, but then we agree that it's possible that the fake cancer could be treated by the method anyways, which would actually bolster. And it's also true that if we just vetted even more to make sure that everyone in it was getting treated by HRT, we would also see a benefit, which in my mind means that we probably should be giving teens HRT. Destiny left, so I can't even ask him.
He left because he's a bitch.
RGR.
Not really.
So probably the issue I would ask. The studies are showing positive outcomes. Is that outcome of fact large enough to warrant a countrywide policy, though? No, but do we have a countrywide policy? And in the states, I should say. Does the
Should
states have a
we have a
countrywide policy? My
countrywide
understanding is that
policy?
there's no countrywide policy protecting trans rights, is there?
I seriously doubt. we should
Specifically
have
youth stuff. We don't. Okay.
because
That's what I thought.
mainly it's like you should never, like in the United States, you should never really have a countrywide policy for any goddamn thing. Let's just be real.
Right. I was assuming Canada. I think in Canada, it's basically completely depoliticized, and it's almost exclusively a negotiation between you and your doctor. I suspect with a lot of stuff that is left exclusively to the doctor, there's almost always a more conservative approach. I can look, but my understanding is, what metric would we need? If Canada is because they're allowing it, we would expect A, more kids to be transitioning in Canada. Per capita rate of kids transitioning. Canada. 0.2%.
Yes, sir.
So it's super, super small.
Copy that, boss.
Yes, sir. Consider it done, boss.
Yes, sir.
Oh, this study's not true. This study's saying that 94% of kids who are
Copy
transgender
that,
as children
boss.
maintain that, but that's not true. 4 out of 5 will
Consider it
actually just
done.
resolve. That's what the
Yes,
SOC
sir.
8 says itself.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Some states are moving to specifically ban it, and then it may come down to trans rights if it's considered protection against gender discrimination. This is the issue when we're implementing science to policy, is
Yep.
I'm not really interested in defending the way the policy looks, because I don't defend it. I think it's bad. Alright. Alright! That's probably my show. I'm gonna rage you guys out.
Yep.
2.
That's it. Lovely. Lovely. Shall we grab something else? It's on the list. Shall we? Let's look at our watch later list. Let's get rid of that. I think that's what we just watched.
Now we're just gonna cut off everything because you admitted that you were wrong. That's
that I travel in. Like, transgenderism is kind of like a non-issue. It's more for the Daily Wire, Matt Walsh types. And so I do not know all the studies, right? I'm not.
Oh, okay. This is that. So that's Destiny watching what we just watched, and then the debate afterwards. Okay. All right. Well, let's remove. Let's do No God, No Morality. So let's see what she's got.
You cannot tell me why I ought to care.
Good faith interlocutor doesn't need to argue this. A good faith secularist would say, I can imagine a world where there is a God, and that would make your axiom make sense in that world. And a good faith Christian can say, I can imagine a world where there isn't a God, and therefore your axioms might make sense, right? What I advocate for is what I think is right in someone else's worldview. I believe God is so big that you can come to his truth without just having to rely constantly of falling back on him. And I guess what I would say to you is, to the Jews, I became like a Jew to win the Jews, and to those under the law, I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law. So as to win under the law, and those not having the law, I became like those not having the law. I am not free from God's law, but I'm under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law. Hi, everyone.
Sweet.
Hello, hello. Hold on. We're almost there. Camera.
We are. Let's go. Let's do it.
I would say that we need to prepare people better for the age of the internet. I feel like there's a fundamental lacking in like the ability to process and sort information by how true it is, separate of like how much you believe it or how compelling you find it. There's also a problem with like dealing with the scale of social interaction that you can have by exposing yourself on the internet. Like, you so much as make a social account, and technically any day, like, somebody could retweet you, and now you're going to have a not fun life with people making fun of you at a scale that you didn't really think about when you.
I hired a maintenance worker.
I think that as humans, we are struggling to overcome the issues that we're running into because of the technological age that we live in, and so I think better preparing people for that would be what I would want to indoctrinate them with.
Yes, sir. Perfect. And then.
All right, we'll just do strength training for the maintenance bro.
Hi, how's it going?
Pretty good. And then, if you're ready, if you could give us an introduction to the topic, what do you think we should socially engineer in society? What are we lacking as a culture?
Oh, nice. Another counterpoint.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Isn't it?
I'm going to be so boring, but I'm going to steal Booksmart's idea. I've been reading, I don't know if Booksmart will agree with me. I've been reading a lot of like Julia Galef and Andrew Normack and a whole bunch of people who are concerned with how we think as a population. And more and more, my channel has been like dedicated towards like, I don't even care what you think entirely. I just want you to come to your conclusions well. Like, I want you to actually think well. I want you to challenge fallacies. I want you to look at your own biases and like not just use them as like truth sayers. I genuinely think. So I want to be really careful. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know the perfect way to prescribe how we socially engineer people to think well. I obviously don't. And I think anyone who tells you that they do is fucking lying to you, unless they've studied it for like years and years. What I am going to say is I think that it's the next worthy venture that education should be focusing on, and I think education's really not focusing on it at all right now. I think education's increasingly focusing on like dogmatic worldviews of just like, what do we believe? And if you get into different sectors of education, you'll see the same type of dogmatism that's just led by whatever political kind of leaning is spearheading that specific education center, whether it's private or public schools.
Thanks. Thank you for the intro. Then, Miss Rachel,
grab another
very excited to have you on. This was kind of our topic that we were working on, and obviously the whole framing, just in case, because right now what I'm hearing is media literacy, social media, and information management. The background of this is basically like,
really
for instance, in Florida, where I am, the Republicans have recently taken books out of classes in order to evaluate their material, and then ban a whole bunch of them, and then now they're moving them back into education classes. For instance, a book about a Asian family eating dim sum was removed for some reason. Don't know why. I guess we don't like Asians anymore. That's cool. But then also we're worried about progressive ideology being pushed on children as well. So transgenderism, LGBTQ issues, history, all that kind of stuff. So what are your feelings on what positively should we socially engineer?
So are we kind of starting with social engineering along with education, or are we doing them separately?
You can go both. I consider the topics intertwined. What do we culturally promote and what do we educationally promote? And then the second topic will be more specifically about education.
Sure. So if you want to talk about what we should promote, that gets into sticky philosophical territory where you can't just grant that we all agree on should or why should anything. That becomes a moral question, right? Why ought we do something is a moral question. And I think you can't answer that through a secular lens. Secular worldviews can't give you any reason to do anything. They can't give you any justification for moral foundation at all. People want them to, and they try to force that, but you really can't.
They do.
So I think if we're talking about social engineering and education, the public school system was actually originally developed by Horace Mann and Elizabeth Palmer Peabody and others who liked the Prussian model and wanted to use it in order to socially engineer American society. And they thought that by doing that, if we got everybody on the same page with the same worldview, we could bring world peace. We could have a great population that was almost like industrialized and militarized and trained to work off of bells and be very submissive to authority and things of that nature. So education is indoctrination, right? It is social engineering. That's the purpose, which is why I advocate for a lot of alternatives to public education, like homeschooling, other forms of private schooling, because through an American lens where we believe in liberty for liberty's sake, without any true moral foundation anymore, because we're trying to have religious freedom, which ended up being a secular worldview, we really can't justify or agree on any kind of morality. So I think at this point, you kind of have to opt out of the system and return to what I think are justifiable moral worldviews, which would be things like family and Christianity.
Okay, thank you for that intro. And then sometimes in these debates, we land back on like legalistic stuff as far as like what can we achieve in the real world. I don't care.
So I'm gonna actually switch you up to Juggernaut.
If you think it should, I want to hear about it. Stardust, please.
Okay. Of all the things that we can socially engineer, I think the most important is community. A sense of community is something we've left fall to the wayside, and fostering that within future generations is important for the success of our society as a whole. Regardless of political leaning, a sense of community is crucial for children's development.
Juggernaut, computer.
Empathy, support, and responsibility. And a strong sense of community can lead to higher self-esteem, positive relationships, and a lifelong desire to give back and contribute to society.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Miss Top Dodge.
Okay, so Stardust scared me, and I thought we had to write an intro, so I did write one, but it's a little bit long.
Roger that.
I think that we have lost the value of resilience. Instead of embracing challenges, young people have been seduced by a culture of fragility. They are taught to view victimhood as virtue and offense as righteous. I think it's time to reclaim the qualities that have defined great individuals throughout history: resilience, strength, anti-fragility. Everything that is great comes with difficulty, and with difficulty comes pain. Exercise, practice, eating well, the pursuit of truth, these are not easy things. They require physical pain and confrontation with painful ideas. We have to instill in future generations a fierce appreciation for the many moments of suffering which forge within us greatness and a determination to face life's challenges head-on, and a steadfast spirit that will enable them to persevere and achieve that greatness. I think this ties, and this is, not the dumb, but I think this ties into our current understanding of victimhood culture and the many issues that students have with microaggressions and, triggers and cancel culture. It all stems from this feeling of victimhood and this exaltation of being the victim. So that's all.
You'll be fine.
Thanks. All right, we are now in the open. We're going to run for about an hour. Then we'll move into a second topic that'll be related to the first topic. The main times I'm going to interrupt are going to be to re-summarize the question or the perspectives and then move it back. I am going to let you guys fight it out. Have fun fighting. Let's go. Whoever wants it, get it.
Yes, sir.
So Rachel, I thought it was super interesting that your central point was like, oh, well, why don't we move away from the public education system and move into alternatives? I actually was homeschooled, so I'm going to be pretty in agreement with you on that. But I also think it's interesting because you seem to really centralize family values and Christianity. And I'm not a Christian, but I actually really do like a lot of values that Christianity is supposed to be advocating for. So what are some of the Christian values that you're hoping to get in place?
Look at that, dude.
Right, so that's another sticky kind of subject because, well, what the heck is Christianity, right? There's 50 billion different forms of it now. We've got, 50,000 different Protestant churches. The Catholic churches aren't in agreement even on what kind of mass they should have anymore. And Orthodox Christianity, the original form, is less than 1% in the United States. So this gets pretty sticky. I think that because Protestantism has evolved so far away from original Christianity and become a very DIY, self-interpreted type of religion, that it's people are falling away from it in huge numbers. Traditional Catholicism kind of went away after Vatican II, and now the Catholics are in total disarray as well. I think that if we go by the original patristic understanding of the Christian faith, we would want to see something like the family unit be central to society. Stardust was saying, you know, we lost community. That's absolutely true. You used to have community be centered around family. And when we sent women into the workforce in such huge numbers, women were the main drivers of community. We're the ones that, you know, put together the potlucks or the festivals or the fundraisers. We're the ones that take care of the elderly and the young and the sick. So community has disappeared because women are in cubicles working for corporations. So I would like to see a return to motherhood, to putting parenting first as a full-time job, to making marriage an actual sacrament rather than just a legal piece of paperwork. And I think those things, we could start from there and work out.
Yes, sir.
How do you deal with like trying to socially engineer essentially what is pretty much like your own faith, pretty much? And I guess you might argue that it's a majority of Americans as far as faith goes, but that's not really that true anymore. So why Christianity? Why not another faith, or why not multiple faiths?
Well, yeah, the reason for that is because I do a bit of theology and some apologetics. I have to get even better at that before I can really like truly dive in 100% to that. But the Protestant Christian system is not a holistic system that makes sense. It's not coherent. When you really dive in and try to pick it apart, it falls apart. Which is why I'm an Orthodox Christian. We have the only coherent Christian worldview where the theology and the entire system all the way through makes sense and is coherent, and I think that's the only thing you can base it off of. Same thing with things like Islam, New Age religions, other innovations. When you pick apart the system, when you really try to find out, is it coherent? Can you logically work through it and have it make sense? You find that it can't. And I know that faith is faith, right? You have to have faith, but the system should still be logical and coherent. You shouldn't have to be trying to piece together things that are completely contradictory, because then what we have is atheism and nihilism. And that's what we've ended up with. Many, many people in the West in modern times are very nihilistic, very atheistic, and very secular. So that's the problem.
It'll be fine.
I feel like I'd love to talk more about that sometime, but maybe this isn't the format. But
sure, yeah. If you guys want to jump in, go for it.
This is Rachel for Patriarchy talking here, and this is Alice, my slang.
I don't think secularism necessarily means that we have to lose community. I think that, like for example, I understand what you're saying about women entering the workforce, but women have always been in the workforce in some capacity. They've just been in.
She is really low, man.
Yeah, Roman Catholic is. Vash Orthodoxy is a whole other. We're not going to get into theology. I'm going to avoid theology today. I don't want to get into there. I know I'm muted. I'm intentionally muted.
Take part in their communities, as were the rest of society. So I just think that it's not necessarily that we need to. I'm trying to see where I'm trying to find the right words for this.
Well, maybe I should just ask. So when we say women in the workforce, what I'm talking about is mothers. So if you are, you know, past your childbearing years, your kids have grown up and left the nest, sure, working full time is probably great. Although I would still say you probably should be thinking about being a grandmother and helping your community and the larger family, right? We used to have extended family, which is another thing that's kind of gone by the wayside. But I think that mothers of young children, for them to be out of the home for 40, 50 hours a week is seriously problematic. And we can take a look at all the different statistics of what has happened to children over the last 50 years and see that generally the trend is downward in every parameter you can think of, from mental health, addiction, crime rates, performance in school. I mean, childhood mental illness used to be extremely rare prior to 1970. It was considered very rare. Now it's super common for kids to have anxiety and ADHD and depression and gender dysmorphia.
Was it rare, or was it that it was underdiagnosed?
No, that's a really common thing for people to say. Oh, it's always been this way. You just never heard about it. It just wasn't reported, or it was underdiagnosed.
No, the issue is that, like, as society, it's the common Maslow issue, right? As societies solve lower tier issues, higher tier issues become a problem. Like, calling something a first world problem is decently accurate, because there is an element of truth of, like, if you're like struggling to survive for like water and food, it's often hard to like be questioning like where you fit into the world and if you like really are who you should be in this world, right? So like there's an element of like, yeah, there probably was genuinely an underdiagnosis of anxiety, specifically when you're into the 50s and 60s, but there's also been an increase in anxiety and depression. I mean, most good scientists would just completely agree with you on that. Anxiety and depression is increasing. The issue is like, this is the problem. Being reductive and like narrowing into like a single cause is probably like going back to like thinking well, probably not the best way to think about this, right? When we're talking about something as complex as societal-wide anxiety and depression booming, the reality is it's not going to be as simple as like, damn, it's just because we lost the church and mothers aren't at home. And I know that you're not saying it's just those things. I imagine you think it's more than just those things.
I think that's true of like a lot of these issues, right? A lot of these values.
I'm already
we can all
almost
say like,
maxed.
oh, community is good, and like, you know, being anti-fragile is good, thinking well is good.
Oh,
These are all good
buddy.
in the abstract. But I think like the devil is really in the details here.
Oh, it's,
and a lot of times when we talk about some of the solutions, we get into the issues with inculcating these belief systems, socially engineering these views, and some of the issues with that. Like if we are going to move women more into the role of, you know, caregivers, providers, homemakers, people who are having families, that is also going to like
Strangling
lead to
us,
less
blah, blah, blah,
GDP abundance. Personally, I'm willing to take that trade. I think that's a valuable, you know, offer, and you probably need that for civilization to continue. Looking at the birth rates, but yeah, and like with community, I was talking with Stardust earlier about how one of the issues with community is that we rely, especially left-leaning people, rely so much on the state and the government to do a lot of things for them. And it's this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy where when you defer to the government for healthcare, you're going to reach out less to your local church for those same, you know, support systems. When you defer to the government for this and that and that, and you also defer like responsibility. Yeah,
it becomes a question of community based on what? And this is it's kind of a uniquely American problem, or even I would say Canada has this problem too to some extent, but it's like when you have freedom and liberty and religious freedom and we just say everybody can do whatever they want as long as they're not hurting anyone else. It's like, what is the community based on that's actually cohesive anymore? This is like a serious problem we have. There's no community identity. Everything's a mishmash melting pot of do whatever you want as long as it's not hurting someone else, except we run into a bunch of problems. So community
leftists have constructed so many of the valuable like social pillars that we've had that have anchored us for so long. However, like at the same time, personally, I think the idea of like trying to have Orthodox Christianity as like a meaningful project of wide-scale social engineering is like totally ridiculous. I don't think that's a good idea. But, you know, I think that we have to find as a nation certain ideas that like we can agree on and that we can all work towards that aren't so granular. So yeah, we'll get into that later.
I think when we're talking about community, I think it's a really important conversation, and this is why I really like listening to like people like Jordan Haidt talking about community specifically, because so often when we talk about this, particularly on the conservative side, I feel like we lose like one of the most important points, which is that like when you have technological revolutions that change everything globally, nothing gets to be the same anymore, which means like the idea of like community pillars are falling. It's like, this is true. This is absolutely true. And we do need to resolve it. But the idea of just like, let's just go back to where it used to be. It's like, we can't, because if we go back even 20 years, we're literally talking about a different era with a different like evolution of technology. And now that things have changed so much,
go back?
Well, the idea of like, let's just turn it back to the community. It's like, which community? Because online communities are becoming increasingly prevalent. The idea of like just going back to the community, it's like, okay, well, your random autistic kid doesn't want to hang out with his small town people because there's 2 other autistic people who actually understand him, and he finds much more meaning in community online, where there's just an ability to capture more people and probably find more people similar to him. So like, even the question of community is, what do we even mean?
There's a difference between like a small community, like autism as a community is very different than like a social community that we're talking about here.
No, I'm talking about both. I'm talking about like a small town. So I live in a small town. In my small town, my roommate is autistic. He's not going to make a lot of friends in our small town. That's not going to happen because most people here are pretty neurotypical and they just like kind of do their life. And he's super autistic, which means randomly he's going to scream things like, I want to come in your ass. And it's super funny, but not everyone thinks it's funny. Sorry, I have a really loud alert in my ear. I'm going to pause those. And so the idea of like, when you're talking about a social community, I'm talking about the same thing. I'm not talking about autism community like, you know, like Autism Canada. I'm talking about individual autistic people finding friends, finding people.
One of the issues with this is that the internet also exacerbates the way that people can just like totally torture or manipulate or draw vulnerable autistic people into situations where they're just destroyed. I mean, like Christian is like a good example of this. But like, I feel like there's a lot of autistic people who 20, 30 years ago, they would have just like worked at the local, you know, gas station and they would have been like kind of weird. And now they have communities where they can find people who will encourage them to do all of the behaviors that will really destroy them.
Yes.
So Kayla, one of the things they're saying is that like, we can't just roll back the clock. And that's totally right, because there's so many different technological changes and the social, you know, downstream effects of those that if we're not addressing those, we can't really have the same things that we had in the past. I think that like a good step, and this is like where I get to what I'm saying, is like trying to develop a cultural tool that people can apply to a lot of those online interactions that allow them to handle them better. And I think one of those ways is like moving towards a dignity culture, to like use, I think, Jonathan Haidt's words that he's talked about.
Yeah, I mean, establishing like a cohesive moral system would be really good. I agree with that. And I agree that there's this element of like, as you move to internet communities, what you're basically talking about is even if the community isn't enabling you, there's a constant obfuscation of responsibility because you can infinitely find new community groups. This is why you'll have issue on like online where you have one really toxic person who just rotates through. I mean, we see this on Twitchbowl. They'll just rotate through all of the different Twitchbowl communities, get banned sequentially, just cause a bunch of damage everywhere. And because nobody's really communicating, they're just like a fresh face. There's almost no accountability. So like, I agree that these things are true. And I just to be clear, I'm not standing here and saying, and I know the solution. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying though is that like, when we're talking about these issues, there's a whole bunch of new shit around community that we don't even begin to know how to talk about.
Well,
Okay, I'm gonna interrupt real quick.
I really do feel like I've reached the
speaking
point
autism and
of
integrating into community.
repetition here.
You want to share with?
It really doesn't feel like there's too much more gameplay that I'm going to be able to get out of this.
All right.
Other than doing the same thing over and over and over again. So it's just like, meh.
Consider it done, boss. Roger that.
You know what I mean? So, potatoes. So I think we're going to call it there, boys. Thank you guys for being here. Very much appreciate that. You know what? It's only 8 o'clock. You know what? Let's switch it over to Dark Tide. Yeah. I'm going to end the stream on YouTube.